Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled People Stories. Today we have a very special episode for you, a compilation of some of the best entitled people stories we've read over the past year. So sit back, relax, and enjoy a few hours of the most entitled people you've ever heard of. And by the way, Karen assured me that for every thumbs up this video gets, she won't try to get anyone fired for an entire week. So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. Karen demands my beach house. 10 years ago, my parents passed within 6 months of each other. I was 33, male at the time, and my little sister, Sarah, was 23, female. Losing our parents at such a young age has been rough for the both of us, but probably more consequential for Sarah being such a young adult. Upon their passing, we inherited their home, a paid-off beach house on the Central Oregon coast. I pled with Sarah to keep it with me as a joint asset/vacation home. Honestly, a lot of my motive was looking out for her and the fear of giving a 23-year-old her the one and only inheritance in one fell swoop that she could conceivably blow through and have nothing to show for it in a few years. Especially as she was grieving in her natural party phase of life. I wasn't rich by any means, but was modestly comfortable with a steady job, an employed wife, we're both nurses, and we purchased a townhome together a couple years prior. I saw the house as an appreciating asset, an opportunity to generate a modest monthly income that we could both use. Plus, who doesn't want a beach house in the family? We both lived in Portland, 3.5-hour commute from the property. I saw it as an easy way to generate some steady income, but she wanted to cash out and move to California. Despite my pleas, I had no authority to stop her. The house appraised at $260,000, and my wife and I made the decision to buy her out, thus taking on a $130,000 mortgage. She got her check and did the things I feared she would do. Started with purchasing a new $40,000 SUV, YOLO'd to LA, and leased a swanky apartment with her friend. I didn't hear much from her for the next couple of years as she partied it up and blew through the remainder of her money, then moved to Vegas for a while, finally coming back to Portland 2 years ago with nothing to show for herself. As for me, keeping the house has been a struggle. It cost us countless expenses, bad luck with lousy tenants. In hindsight, we couldn't really afford the mortgage, and I look at it now as a decade wasted and unnecessary struggles. The good news is the house is probably worth $420,000 now. We have 3 kids, a 4-year-old girl and twins born last year. Our townhome is crowded to say the least, so we're looking to cash out the beach house and sell our home to buy a house to fit our growing family. I mentioned my intentions to Sarah, who freaked out, saying I can't, and that home is all we have left of our family, which is ludicrous. We didn't grow up there. Our parents bought that house 4 years before they passed with settlement money. I never lived in it, and Sarah only did for less than a year. She says everything I said about keeping it in the family was a lie, so I should sell it back to her for what I paid. I can see the manipulative BS aspect of her play here, but I think I feel pity and guilt for her because it seems like she's finally legitimately dealing with the trauma of our parents passing and emotionally clinging on to this house as a piece of them. I'm not giving it to her. Wife would never let me, but kind of feeling like a jerk. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you give your sister the beach house or not? Please let us know. She made her bed. Now she has to lie in it. You want us to follow the exact times the app says? Okay. My previous job was as a driver for a company that delivered medications. We had 2 branches. One was delivering to pharmacies, the other was delivering special meds to private citizens. I was a driver on the second branch along with 4 other drivers. The first branch was pretty straightforward. The truck would go to the warehouse, load up, and deliver to pharmacies. The second branch was a bit more complicated. The medications we delivered had special prescriptions, and you could get them only from certain government pharmacies. Also, important for later, the pharmacies didn't have the same stocks of medicines. Our daily schedule consisted of visiting at least one of the pharmacies, get the meds, and start delivering them, and picking the paperwork from the clients for the next day. That meant between 8 to 12 stops every day on a 150-mile radius. Now, the trucks were using an app for their itinerary to maximize their efficiency of their schedule. So, some higher-up decided to make us use the same app. Immediately, that produced problems. First, as I said, the trucker's job was pretty straightforward. They went to the warehouse and were loaded up in half an hour and on their way. We, on the other hand, had to visit the pharmacies and wait in line. That could take between 5 minutes to 2 hours in each location. Second, and the one already noted by the truckers, was that the app didn't accommodate for traffic. And while it wasn't a big problem for the truckers that had 4 stops per day, for us it was a big issue. When it was first implemented as a test, we, the drivers, immediately saw our times starting to rise. The first week we used it, no driver finished with less than 90 minutes overtime a day. We talked about this to our manager and we got permission to not use it. 1 month later, word came down that we had to use the app and we had to follow the itinerary it provided. We expressed our complaints to our manager, but he couldn't do anything about it. The malicious compliance. Before the app, we started working at 7:40, gathered our paperwork, and finding which pharmacy had what medications so we could optimize our routes. The working hours were 8 a.m. to 1600. Those 20 minutes were unpaid overtime, but we never asked for it. Now we started working at exactly 8. We left the offices at 8:30 at best, from 7:50 before, and followed the exact route the app provided. That usually meant that instead of hitting the pharmacies just as they opened with the least amount of people waiting, we hit them in the middle of the day with a lot of people waiting in line. Instead of finishing our routes at 15:30 to 15:50, we finished at 17:30 at the earliest. The first department that got wind of the problem was accounting. They had 5 drivers going from about 3 hours a month of overtime to 35 hours of overtime. The higher-ups tried to weasel their way out of paying the overtime, but when we mentioned that the labor department was in our routes, we got paid the overtime. They kept the app running for another 2 months before they decided that it cost them too much money and canceled it, and we went back to our usual way of maximizing our routes. Am I the jerk for refusing to go to the same college as my stepsister? I'm 17, female, a senior in high school, and making my college decision soon. I got into some really great schools for my major, and I'm really excited for college. My parents divorced when I was 7, and I was living with my mom until she passed when I was 14. I've only been living with my dad and his wife for the past 3 years, but my dad remarried Lisa when I was 9, and she has a daughter, Jan, who's 17, my age. My mom's family has been saving for me to go to college. My maternal grandparents have a 529 for me that they and my mom had been contributing to since I was a baby. It has more than $110,000 right now. Jan has really bad social anxiety and kinda clung to me when I started living with my dad. I guess because Jan didn't really have many friends before I came along, Lisa has taken to pushing me to spend a lot of my time with her. This has only worsened during lockdown, plus the fact that I don't really see her as a sister or a friend, more like a housemate. We didn't interact much when I was living with my mom because my dad would always take me out when I visited him. College decisions and financial aid have all come in, and I got into my first choice school with enough aid that I can graduate debt-free with my mom's family support. I absolutely love this school and its culture, and I really clicked with it when I visited. Jan, however, only feels comfortable going to the state school, which is great for her major that I also got into. Since finding out that I got into state, Jan and Lisa have started talking about the future as if we are going to go to school together and live together at school. When I told them that I got into and plan on going to first college, they exploded. Lisa said that I was abandoning Jan, and Jan has started crying a lot about not knowing anyone in college. Lisa said that if I didn't go to state with Jan, she and my dad would cut off financial support for college. I told her that my grandparents are paying. I got angry and said that if she cuts me off, I can write a really good essay about her cutting me off for more outside scholarships. Last weekend, I went over to my grandparents' house, told them about getting into first college, accepted the admission, and we ate ice cream. I went home and told my dad's family over dinner, and now Lisa has become extremely passive-aggressive about me not supporting family, and Jan just cries and pleads me to change my mind. My dad says that I should take back my commitment and lose $750 and commit to state to keep the peace at home. I might be the jerk because I know Jan will have a hard time adjusting to college without any familiarity, and that me being there would help her, but I flat out refused without really talking to them about it. I also don't want to be around Jan forever. Edit. Wow, I honestly didn't expect this to blow up this much. I'm so sorry that I haven't been able to reply to many people, but I'm definitely reading through all the comments. Thank you so much for your support. I've been talking to my school and grandparents this week and will hopefully figure something out. So far, I've been able to mostly avoid Dad, Lisa, and Jan by staying in my room. I will definitely be sitting down and talking with them this weekend after I gather my thoughts and am able to go into the conversation with a clear agenda. Well, what do you think? Should OP go to the same school as Jan or not? Please let us know. I think OP needs to get as far away from them as possible. And what's with Dad not even sticking up for her against Lisa? Sometimes these stories really upset me. Entitled customer dislocated my finger, kept on shopping. Before lockdown, I worked at a big club warehouse in customer service. That job was great, and members were usually awesome. But every now and then, you'd find the most entitled jerks to ever walk the earth. Based on the way they treated me and others, I can only assume they don't even see us as human. We were only lifelike robots built to ring up their items and load their carts. One such incident that proves my assumption happened on a super busy Saturday. It was pouring outside. Members were fighting over parking close to the door, then bolting for the entrance as if their lives depended on it. As a courtesy to members, on rainy days, we always had someone outside in the front of the cart return bay to dry off the carts. This day was so busy, members were coming in faster than I could dry carts for them. Most were super nice and patient. They waited in line for a dry one, and almost everyone thanked me. A few, who were in a hurry or didn't care about dry carts, just skipped the line and grabbed a wet one. One such member rushed up and grabbed a wet cart from behind me. Sometimes carts get jammed or snagged together. Usually it's the buckles for the kiddie seats getting tangled, but sometimes it's a warp in the cart from damage. This poor member grabbed one such warped cart and it dragged its buddy with it. The member attempted to dislodge it. He yanked, he twisted, he shook them. He looked at me and demanded, "Help me get these carts separated." I offered him a dry one. Nope, he wanted that cart specifically for some reason. I abandoned my drying rag and attempted to pry the carts apart. It was like trying to separate two buffaloes in a hornlock. They refused to budge. I looked at the metal flap that allowed the carts to nest into each other. I saw where it was snagged and reached in to coax it free. I placed my other hand on the lip of the second cart to give me leverage while I untangled them. The member demanded loudly, "Come on, I'm in a hurry." He decided I was clearly too incompetent to separate them, so he reached out to give the front one more tug. At that exact moment, I loosened the second cart and the front cart sprang free. It launched forward, catching my thumb between it and the second stationary cart. I heard the pop sound of my thumb dislocating a few seconds before the pain hit me. I yanked my hand free. The member just looks at me like I'm nuts. "There, all I needed was a cart. Was that so hard?" I'm cradling my oddly shaped hand. "Sir, I think you broke my finger." The member just shrugs, huffs, and walks into the warehouse. Looked like he forgot I existed the second he took his eyes off me. My supervisor witnessed the whole thing, but was more worried about me, not the member. He pulled me aside and radioed for ice. Lucky, or unlucky, I am very pain tolerant. It's not the first joint I've dislocated. I also know the easiest way to end the pain is to reset the joint. I fiddle around with my weirdly dangly thumb until I feel it click back into place. My whole thumb was swollen and turning a lovely shade of purple. My supervisor got me sent inside to write up an incident report. He sent a posse of employees into the store to find the member and sentence him to banishment. But as it was insanely busy, they never found him. By far the worst customer ever. At least I got an extra day off and a great macabre story out of it. Am I the jerk for not giving my neighbor's kids good food? So I know that this is really stupid, but some of my friends have told me that I'm in the wrong here. To get started, here's our cast. We've got me, female 38. We've got neighbor, female 32. We've got my husband, male 39. We've got kid 1 who's 8, kid 2 who's 7, and my kid who's 8. My neighbor moved in not too long ago with her 2 sons. Seeing that she had a lot of unpacking to do, I went over to her house and offered to babysit her kids for her. She thanked me and walked her kids over to my house. I kept some of my son's toys from when he was younger. He's moved out already, and set them up in my yard. My daughter is fairly extroverted and immediately went outside to play with them. It was around noon at that time, so I started to make lunch. I made some turkey sandwiches with American cheese, a simple lunch that we always have. I brought out some plates so that the kids could eat outside on our benches. The kids loved it, and 30 minutes later the sandwiches were gone and they were back playing soccer and tag. A few hours later, the neighbor's kids and my kid marched inside and sat down, tired. I put on some cartoons and told them I would be right back as I left to go get the neighbor to pick up her kids. She looked tired, but was happy that she didn't have to deal with the boys running around while she unpacked. She came over and took her boys. By this time, my husband was parking in our driveway, home from work. My daughter had a fun time telling her father all about the day while I ordered pizza on my phone. About 5 minutes later, while I was still asking what everyone wanted, I heard a knock on my door. It was the neighbor. I thought she was going to thank me again, but she got angry and shouted at me. The following is some basic dialogue from what I can remember, though this did happen a few weeks ago. Me. Oh, hey neighbor. Neighbor. Look, we need to talk right now. Me. Oh, sure. What do you need? Well, my sons told me that you gave them sandwiches for lunch. Me. Yes, I did. They really Well, that is not enough for my boys. They're growing boys, and they need to have good food, and not whatever you gave them. Me. Really? Yes. No. And I shut the door in her face. My daughter didn't really hear any of our conversation, but she asked me. I just told her that the neighbor didn't like sandwiches. She didn't bother to ask further and watched some shows in her room. My husband just laughed, and so did I. The lady got mad that I fed food to her sons for free, right? But as it turns out, 3 of my close friends told me that I was rude and I should have given them something better. We had mashed potatoes and some leftover pork that wouldn't take more than 29 minutes to heat up and serve, but I didn't feel like giving them that. I don't see the problem with what I did, but I trust my friends and I want to know if I should apologize. So Reddit, am I the jerk? Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for giving her neighbor's sons sandwiches or not? Please let us know. I think your friends might just be messing with you, OP. Either that or it's time to find some new ones. You're not acting like yourself. A little background. I manage a hotel in a downtown metropolitan city, and during the lockdown, like many other hotels in our area, we've taken in shelter guests when they disperse the shelters for social distancing purposes. Most of our guests are in housing programs, and the hotel doesn't have many rules. No visitors, only registered guests allowed upstairs. Don't smoke in the room, and if you're on anything, you need to stay in your room. The programs themselves have many additional rules to these, and if any are broken, the clients risk losing their accommodations with us, and possibly their program, meaning they'd be effectively exited to the street to fend for themselves. Now to the story. I had a guest who is generally very kind, but has gotten in trouble in the past for trying to sneak in visitors. We allow 1 visitor instance with a final warning. You do that and break any additional rules, and you're out. This guest, who we'll call John, came down to the desk to renew his key, and he was curious about a few things. He was asking if the hotel would ever let visitors into the hotel, even as the state is going into Phase 3. I admitted that no, this would not be allowed during his stay because the visitors rule is not only for the hotel staff safety, but it's also a rule of their program in order to keep from relapse. He appeared to get really frustrated at this point and appeared to be insisting that we should talk to the program leaders to allow the clients to let their friends come and go as they please and let anyone and everyone into the hotel and into whomever's room so long as they know the name of the guest. I explained that even before lockdown, we couldn't do that for security purposes, and I certainly wouldn't be talking to the program leaders to try and sway that, as I will never put the safety of my staff and my guests in jeopardy like that. Certainly not for what I know he wants them up there for. He started saying that I was being very unreasonable, and I leveled with him. Look, John, I may not understand what you're going through specifically, but I get being lonely. I never see my family anymore because I can't quarantine. I only get to see my boyfriend for 1 day a month if I'm lucky. I get what you feel. It sucks, and it's hard to go through. But trust me when I say that it's better for you in the long run if you're not exposed to the people that you want to bring upstairs. They aren't good for your long-term progress, and you've been doing remarkably well. This time, he gets really angry and starts saying everything he was saying before, and this time I notice his body language. His words are slurring ever so slightly. His eyes are glazed over, and he's not really looking at me when he's speaking. There's 3 possible situations right now. 1, he's been drinking. 2, he's on something. 3, he's overtired. I have a feeling we're sitting at 2 because he's coherent enough to have this discussion with me, which, quite honestly, I was done having 15 minutes ago. And he's slowly building to an aggressive state, which won't be welcome at the desk. But I like John. He's nice when he's sober, and he's really funny and he likes to joke around with me. I have to realize that this isn't who I'm talking to right now. I cut him off mid-sentence about why we should revolt against the state mandates, and I say, John, are you feeling okay? And he stops and finally looks me in the eyes. "You're not acting like yourself," I state boldly. His eyes get a little wider, like he's been caught. "Your words are slurring, and you're having a hard time focusing on what I'm telling you." He's just staring at me. He's definitely been caught on something in the lobby, which means if somebody finds out, he won't have to worry about bringing people upstairs because he won't have an upstairs to go to. Time for the final blow. "I think maybe you should go lie down," I challenge. John's fright doesn't disappear as he slowly nods. "Yeah," he says, his face going a little pale. I don't think I'm feeling well. Maybe getting a little head cold or something. I'm gonna go lie down." And he left the desk without another word and went upstairs. "Good idea, John. Now you won't lose your housing. You'll stay with your program and keep getting better. I'm sorry I had to do that, but scaring you was the only way to get you to stop. Now stop doing that stupid crap, John, before it gets you hurt." Free breakfast for the whole family. This happened a few months ago before lockdown. I used to travel with work and spent 1 week a month in a city 300 miles away. I found a lovely little family-run bed and breakfast place close to work, and because I was a repeat customer, the owners let me have a good deal on their rate, and I got to know them very well. There were only about 6 rooms in the place that were let out. This was a city on the coast that was the starting point for cruises, so mostly guests only stayed the night before their cruise sailed, not a few days. One morning, I was just finishing breakfast. The B&B offered full English breakfast as standard. Sausage, bacon, eggs, tomato, baked beans, mushrooms, etc., along with the usual toast, croissant, cereals, and juice. I usually just got toast because a full-cooked breakfast would just make me want to go back to bed. Anyway, the B&B owner did the breakfast cooking, and he was popping in and out of the kitchen to check on the guests and take orders when the doorbell rang. It was new guests arriving. Check-in times were 2 p.m. at the earliest because check-out was 11 a.m., and that would give him time to get the rooms clean. We could hear him explaining this. It was all in the paperwork and on the website, and times had been clarified at booking. The new arrivals kept arguing they wanted to leave their luggage somewhere. Why couldn't they leave it in their room? Because it's not their room just yet. Other guests are still using it. David, the B&B owner, tried to explain that there wasn't space to leave their luggage other than in the dining room, and that was a public area. And then they came marching into the dining room. 4 adults and 4 kids. They asked where they should sit for breakfast. David explained that the breakfast was included after a night's stay, not before. And according to his records, only 2 adults and 2 kids were booked, not 4. At this point, some of the other guests were leaving. We're British. We aren't good with people making a public spectacle. It's like secondhand embarrassment. So the adults began moving tables together. David asks them to stop. "But we're hungry. We were told breakfast would be included. You owe us breakfast for making us wait for our rooms." He said they could have coffee, but he had to insist the tables remained where they were. This wasn't good enough. The kids started whining about wanting breakfast and started attacking the self-serve buffet area, where cereals, pastries, and yogurts were set out. David asked them to stop and said that if they continued, he would have to increase their room rate, and they laughed, saying, "We're not staying here." It turned out that one family of 2 adults and 2 kids were staying overnight before setting off on holiday the following day, and they'd met up with friends, the other 2 adults and 2 kids, and told them to come to get free breakfast at the B&B. One of the adults started complaining about the room rate and how it was so expensive that they deserved to get unlimited food, and the owner had been so unwelcoming and so rude as to order them around that they deserved money off the bill. Then they started talking about leaving bad reviews, so he should make it up to them. All of this took less than 5 minutes start to finish. It ended when David picked their luggage up and put it outside and told them to check their terms and conditions, which included a good behavior clause. One of the other guests asked if he should phone the police. One of the women burst into tears, saying her holiday had been ruined and she was going to sue for the cost of the cruise that she wouldn't enjoy. And one of the teens threw a yogurt against the wall. The other guest got his phone out and said he would be happy to give the police a witness statement that this rabble was assaulting the owner. Lots of shouting, threats, and noise, but they ended up getting locked out. At breakfast the next day, David told me that they had come back at 2 p.m. expecting to check in as normal and weren't happy that he had canceled their booking because of their behavior. He said guests like that were the type that would deliberately wreck the place and then demand money off because the place was wrecked. Who the heck would be a small business owner and deal with the general public? Am I the jerk for not doing anything for my daughter's birthday? My daughter, let's call her Thea, turned 15 last Saturday, and due to everything going on, we couldn't really celebrate it. I asked her a few days before if there was something special that she wanted to do, and she said no. On the day of her birthday, I asked her if she wanted me to order a cake, and she refused that too. She's introverted and doesn't like making a big deal of things, so I let it be. She spent most of her day talking to her friends on call, and I cooked a nice dinner for her and my son. My wife is usually the one who organizes birthdays and stuff, but she's been living with her mother for the past few days due to some health issues. On most birthdays, my wife is also met with the "I want nothing" by my daughter, but she does stuff anyways. She usually bakes a cake, buys some gifts, and cooks all her favorite foods. The next day, on call, she asked me what I did for Thea's birthday, and when I told her my daughter didn't want a celebration, she blew up on me. According to her, my daughter is too shy to ask for things and doesn't like asking people to make a fuss about her birthday. She was very angry that I didn't even buy her a cake, even after I repeatedly told her that Thea said she didn't want a cake. According to her, these are things that should be done without asking. I would like to mention that my wife coddles my kids a lot. I thought that was the end of the conversation. Later in the evening, my brother-in-law showed up with cake and gifts for Thea. My wife probably asked him to do so, but he's very close to the kids, so I didn't think much of it. But then he jokingly said to me, "What kind of father doesn't buy cake for his kid's birthday?" I told him the same thing again, and he said that having your birthday during everything going on is horrible enough, and I should have just bought some cake. I agree, it is, but she said she didn't want it. It's been annoying me a lot. I hate how both my wife and brother-in-law keep implying that I don't know what my own kid wants. I just want to know, am I really the jerk? I just did what my daughter asked. More information. 1. I did not do nothing for my daughter. I made pizza for dinner, which she loves. I also sang her the birthday song and hugged her really tight. There was someone who had a problem with that. My daughter isn't big on physical contact, but she likes to hug people on their birthdays. It's a tradition she started. I was not forcing her to do something that she didn't want to do. 2. The whole buying the cake on the same day. I don't know how hard it is where you live, but as long as I can remember, cakes are bought on the day of the birthday. I did not know this was something people didn't do. Unless of course it's a customized cake, and we haven't done that for the kids since they were 10. 3. My wife is not a horrible person. A little bit overbearing, sure. She did wish my daughter a happy birthday in the morning, but she's busy taking care of her mother. Update. Wow, I can't believe the number of things people picked apart from this post. Some of you are worse than English teachers trying to find hidden meanings in blue curtains. However, I decided to apologize to her. I did speak to my daughter. I sat her down and apologized for not doing anything or buying a cake, and her only response was, "Papa, chill, it's just a birthday." I did give her money, and before you get on my case of how unthoughtful that is, she usually spends her money on books or clothes. I feel those are hard things to pick for anyone, not just my daughter. I would rather she buy something she likes than be stuck with something she doesn't. I think the major problem for people is that I waited till the day of her birthday to buy her a cake, which means I don't care about my daughter. I don't know what to say about that. Getting a good cake isn't that hard. People keep saying I should have pre-ordered so they don't run out of cakes. If the store doesn't have what I want, I'll just go to another store. There's a million of them. Also, that one person who got on my case for saying my daughter instead of our daughter needs to calm down. I'm gonna end this here. Thanks to all the people who sent me an award. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk, or did he do nothing wrong? Please let us know. I dare you to not get me a cake on my birthday, Mr. Reddit. Am I the jerk for taking away my pregnant wife's credit card because she keeps ordering food that's bad for our baby? My wife is 6 months pregnant, and cravings are hitting her hard. I sympathize with that, but unfortunately, it seems like her cravings are all for things that our doctor has specifically told us to avoid for the health of our baby. She just can't seem to control herself when the cravings hit. She ends up door dashing the forbidden items. It's not like she's done this once or twice either. In the last week, she has ordered Subway 4 times and sushi twice. This has been going on for months. I've tried to convince her to make these things at home with approved ingredients, but she says they just aren't the same. I've asked her to consider the health of our baby, and she says that her mental health is more important. I can't help but think that this is a ridiculous notion. Foregoing uncooked lunch meat and seafood isn't going to give her emotional trauma. I'm the main breadwinner in the house and decided to cut off her access to our cards for the time being. I think this might make me a bit of a jerk because it makes me feel more like her parent than her partner. But I am a soon-to-be parent. I need to protect my kiddo. Edit. Sushi and Subway aren't the only things that she's been eating on the forbidden list. Those were just the examples from the last week. I probably should have included that in my OP. She's also eating a lot of undercooked meat and eggs, drinking energy drinks, had a few glasses of wine, etc. Edit 2. Doctor has been informed of her diet choices. He sternly told her that she needs to change that. She refuses to listen to him about this too. Edit 3. I accept that Reddit thinks I am the jerk. However, I still feel this is justified behavior. I will not allow my wife to have a credit card until she agrees to follow the doctor's recommendations for the health of our child. She still has access to our Amazon account with the card saved and is free to shop for whatever needs she has. But the only food that will come into the house is what I bring home from the grocery shopping or if we plan to get takeout together. Oh, and all the people recommending that book, Expecting Better by Emily Oster, no thanks. She is an economist, not a medical doctor, not even a scientist in the field of biology. I will continue to go by the guidelines set forth by medical professionals. Karen thinks she's a genius. I give her a reality check. A friend of mine decided to take advantage of working from home by enrolling in an online class. I thought that was great, and we, her friends, were all of course nothing but supportive. She ended up taking a class that has something to do with how big budget movies are made. She was eager to share what she was learning, and it quickly became apparent, based on the kind of things that she was saying, that this was a pretty intro-level class. But she was excited, and she's already doing one better than me to be furthering her education. So I feigned interest whenever she brought something up, not lying or anything, just the usual polite, "Oh wow, did you learn that in class? How's that going?" type of back and forth. But she started to get so uppity with the way that she volunteered information, where it was no longer her being enthusiastic, but more her delighting in knowing something we didn't know. And it was things we actually all knew, which was the particularly frustrating part. For example, we were all discussing what movies were good to watch this evening, and I suggested a picture because it was set in our hometown. The friend chimed in, Wrong. I just looked it up, and it was actually shot in Louisiana. Movies do that because it's cheaper to shoot there with sets than in the real big-name locations. You seriously thought they actually shot them all on location? And this is after weeks of similar incidents like this. So that was the final straw for me, and I finally said, I know, I said set in, not filmed in. You know a lot of this stuff isn't new information for the average person. I'd think twice before presenting yourself as some film buff when most of us know about everything you've brought up so far. She turned to our friends for support. They tacitly supported me, but mostly opted to stay out of it. After the conversation ended and we had parted ways, I felt badly about it because ultimately she was just trying to share something she was excited about with us, and I could have approached the constructive criticism a whole different way. But she was being incredibly condescending repeatedly. Either way, it's driving me mad. Just give it to me straight. Am I the jerk? Well, what do you think? Was OP the jerk, or was their friend? Please let us know. When someone's acting like a neckbeard, you treat them like a neckbeard. Not the jerk. Let's move on. Give me a hard time when I'm serving you and your friends? Okay. Years ago, I worked at a busy corporate sit-down burger restaurant. One day, I'm hustling through the lunch rush, and I have 6 college guys sit down. One flags me over and loudly pronounces that they're ready to order right away. What are you guys having? I ask. Guys? The same guy says with a smirk on his face. Guys? That doesn't sound like a very professional greeting to me. I work at a restaurant too, and if I walked up to a table and asked, "What are you guys having?" my manager would definitely let me know that was inappropriate. The other guys at the table look kind of uncomfortable at this exchange and just silently sit there. The main guy looks around at all of them and keeps going. Why don't you come up to us again and do it right? At this point, I'm looking around at my massive section of tables and getting the distinct feeling I'm going to be at this table forever. I'm trying not to lose my cool, so I smile. Sure, I say, take several steps back and walk up again. Gentlemen, how are you all doing? Ready to order? The main guy smirks and nods. I look directly at him. How about you, Chief? What are you having today? Some of the other guys laugh. He looks angrily at me, but orders his burger and a drink. I get everyone's order and hustle off. I return with drinks a little while later. I set everyone's drinks down and do the main guy last. Here you go, boss. I leave before he can say anything. Through the course of their meal, I call him a bunch of different nicknames every time. You need a refill, pal? How's your burger, buddy? Need more ketchup, bro? Can I get that plate out of your way, dude? Any dessert for you, amigo? Need me to split your check, brother? Make sure to leave me one signed copy, muchacho. So by this time, this guy is boiling. His friends are loving it though. As time has gone on, the rest of them keep looking at me expectantly. What nickname next? Finally, they all get up to leave. Lunch rush has ended, and I'm chilling at this point. I casually walk up to them. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming in. The rest of the group is smiling. I look at the main guy. And you, have a fantastic day, Hoss. The rest of the guys cheer. They all head out. I grab all their receipts on the table. Surprise, surprise, the main guy left me 0 for a tip. I didn't care. It was all worth it. Am I the jerk for telling my brother I wasn't excited about sister-in-law's pregnancy? My brother Matt and his wife Lucy have 6 sons. Their youngest, John, is 2 and was born with a chromosomal abnormality. It's so rare that the doctors aren't entirely sure how this will affect him in the future. Currently, his development is much slower than other kids. Matt and Lucy have been taking him to all sorts of specialists, a speech therapist, and a physical therapist. Their insurance covers some, but not all of this, and the out-of-pocket fees can get pretty hefty. From what I know of their finances, they're not struggling, but they also don't have much to spare. 3 months ago, Lucy announced that they were expecting another kid and made it clear that this wouldn't necessarily be their last. I was immediately concerned, but tried to ignore it and be excited and supportive. I congratulated them, was super enthusiastic at their gender reveal. Basically, I did my best to hide how I felt, but it didn't work. Matt approached me and my boyfriend at a family gathering to ask what was wrong and why I seemed more thrilled about our sister's puppy than his wife's pregnancy. I tried to play it off like it was nothing and I just had a lot on my plate, but he was insistent. My boyfriend tried to deflect by joking that I had run out of ways to show my excitement the 7th time around, and boy, did Matt not like that. I decided to just come clean and tell Matt that I knew I had no right to tell him how many kids he could have and that I would love my new nephew just as much as the rest of my nephews. But I assumed he would stop having kids after John so that they could focus as much time and resources on him as possible. He was upset and said that just because John has a special need doesn't mean other kids will. I explained to him that I was more worried about them having enough money to afford the best possible doctors and therapists for John and enough time and energy to advocate for him and help him. He said they always wanted a big family and John doesn't change that, and they can always get the older kids to look after the younger ones when something with John comes up. I said 6 kids already is a big family, and it was unfair to expect that of his older kids. He blew up and told me I had no idea what I was talking about because I don't have kids, and I probably won't since I overthink so much. I would talk myself out of having them for even the smallest of risks. And when you have kids, you just make it work. I told him I don't think assuming he could just make it work was a good idea, and I was sorry, but I couldn't force myself to be excited when he hadn't said anything to ease my concerns, and that maybe I was a bit more excited about our sister's new puppy because she triple-checked that she had the finances, time, and appropriate environment before adopting. He grabbed Lucy and stormed off, and I haven't heard from them since. I texted an apology because they won't take my calls. Edit. Thank you all so much for weighing in. I really do appreciate it. I've seen and read some comments saying I think John is a burden/unloved, and I was basically telling him to not have the baby. I just wanted to say that that is not the case at all. I adore John. He's my godson and such a smiley, sweet blessing of a baby, and I'm sure I'll feel the same about my new nephew. My concern is coming from the fact that we have no idea what John's future will look like. Some people with this condition are adults who are living independently, while others require care for the rest of their lives. Just because John has needs that their other kids don't doesn't make him a burden. Burden implies that we're not happy to give John everything he might need or want, and that couldn't be further from the truth. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her brother? Please let us know. Sometimes people get so caught up in the idea of wanting to have a bunch of kids that common sense goes out the window. The Karen with the White Audi. This happened about 4 years ago now, before Karens were called Karens, but the type still existed. I'm an electromechanical engineer and had been called out to deal with a set of faulty automatic gates. They had stuck in the open position and it was compromising the security of the building. My job was to find out what had caused them to stick open, fix it, and get them working again. This particular manufacturer of gates uses an encoder to tell the control panel where the gates are in their swing, and it turned out kids had been riding on the gates and had caused this to go out of calibration. Recalibration was a simple 2-minute job. I had put a couple of traffic cones on each side of the gates and set the calibration going. During this process, the gates opened fully and then closed fully twice at about half the usual speed, around 120 seconds. Enter entitled Karen. She had parked her White Audi in the secure compound whilst the gates were open, and even though she was only allowed in there to load and unload into her shop, she regularly parked all day in a visitor space, totally against the terms of her lease. So I set the calibration going and the gates did their first swing totally open, at which point Karen came out to her car and started her engine. The gates started to close again, and Karen pulled out of her space like a nut job and accelerated towards the gates, stopping just before the cones but revving her engine like she wasn't pleased. Seeing them closing, she pressed her fob button to get them to open, but of course they were calibrating, so they were totally ignoring all instructions from her fobs. The gates closed fully, the lock mechanism engaged, and they started to do their second swing, at which point she started to roll forwards, revving all the time. Just as she touched the cone with her car, she pushed it back and broke the infrared safety beam, thus aborting the entire procedure and making the gates lock in a slightly open state. She sounded her horn and shouted at me, demanding to be let out. I told her she had caused the processor to fault and those gates weren't opening anytime soon. It would be at least 5 minutes before I could restart the procedure, and I had to power them totally down. I didn't, but she didn't know. She proceeded to start shouting and getting angry, so I just said, "Sod you." I'm parked outside. I locked the control box, walked to my van with my tools in my pocket, and started driving away. About 2 minutes later, I got a call from the landlord of the building pleading with me to go back and saying that Karen was really sorry. I gave in. I went back and I started the calibration again. But this time, I deliberately turned the speed on both motors to the lowest setting, so it took about 10 minutes in total. Karen never did apologize, and she still sped out like an idiot as soon as I moved the cones, but it gave me great pleasure knowing that my malice made her almost half an hour late. Am I the jerk for refusing to pay my sister's rent? To my parents? This probably could do with some context and backstory, so here we go. I, 19, male, have a stepsister, 18, female. For clarity, my bio parents got divorced when I was very young, so I never knew my real dad, and my stepsister is my stepdad's daughter from a previous marriage. I've always known my stepsister was the favorite with my parents. Just little things, like when I was young and had birthdays, she always had to have presents and a fair share of the attention, while the reverse was never the case on her birthday. When I was 14, I got a paper round to earn a bit of pocket money. My parents forced me to give my sister half of that money. The same was true when I was 16 and I got a Saturday job at Burger King. Using my share of my pay that I saved up and bought myself a laptop to do schoolwork on. When my stepdad found out, he made me share that with my stepsister too. True to form, she managed to delete all of my schoolwork, including my A-level coursework. Then when I confronted her about it, she smashed the laptop on the floor. By this point, I had also turned 18, and my parents decided that since I was 18 and working, I needed to pay rent, which I did for about 6 months before I decided to move into a flat shared with some friends. So partially because of the aforementioned laptop incident, I missed out on the grades I needed to go to my chosen uni. So I'm having to retake a couple of subjects while working full-time. That's okay, I can manage that now that I'm out of the madhouse. But last weekend, I got a phone call from Mom. She and stepdad have decided that since they started charging me rent when I turned 18 and stepsister has just turned 18, it's only fair that they charge her rent too. The kicker? Because she hasn't got a job, has never had a job, and isn't even looking for one, they think that it would be a nice and brotherly thing for me to help her pay, i.e. pay them rent on her behalf. I told them no, since I don't see why I should be responsible for yet more expenses on her behalf. Plus, I'm already paying my own rent, utilities, and council tax. I don't have a huge amount of spare money to afford that. Things didn't get nasty or heated on the phone at that time, but now I have uncles, aunts, cousins, grandparents, etc. blowing up my phone and my Facebook, calling me a horrible son and ungrateful for not stepping up to help out. So, am I the jerk here? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his parents? Please let us know. I would cut each and every one of those folks out of your life. This one really breaks my heart. Am I the jerk for calling the cops on my neighbor's kids? I heard kids playing on my porch, so I told my kids to get their socks and shoes on because it sounded like their friends were outside playing already. My daughter opens the door, and two very small kids jump off of my porch and they start running towards the road, which made me nervous right off the bat because they were so small, about 3 and 4. But they stopped and came back when they saw it was just my kids, and I realized that these were two kids that I had not seen before at all in the neighborhood, and there was no adult in sight supervising them. I tried to ask them where they lived, where their grown-up was, and if I could walk them home, but the boy kept yelling at me that he knows where he lives, at the mountain. This doesn't make sense. We live 2 hours away from the closest mountain, but he's also around 3. So I called the non-emergency police line and explained the situation. 2 cops showed up about 20 minutes later and found the mom about 10 houses down. She kept glaring at me as the cop was talking to her. When they left, she meekly starts calling her kids, who are just straight up ignoring her, and I said, "I don't think that's going to work. I think you need to come get them." She glared at me again and took 10 minutes to wrangle up her kids and go home. I'm not sure if this paragraph is going to add any context or if it's just going to make me feel better to type it out because it was weird, but here goes. The girl wouldn't talk to me at all, probably shy, but the boy was weirdly demanding and disrespectful, even for a 3-year-old. He told me to get him water, and I did, which he screamed at me for not bringing him a big bottle of water. Then at one point, when I was waiting for the cops, he told me that he was going in my house to get more toys to bring out, and I told him, "No, you're not," and he straight up looked me in the eye and said, "Yes, I am," and was going to just walk in my house. I don't know if this is just offhanded weirdness or if maybe these kids are allowed to do whatever they want in their house. It honestly just kind of floored me because my kids would never talk to me that way, let alone a strange adult. He also told the cop that he ran away because he felt like it. Anyway, when I told my best friend and mom, they agreed with what I did. But when I told my boyfriend, he brought up that the lady might have been glaring at me because they might not be fully legal here, and I may have put them on blast. I'm definitely not trying to get anyone deported, but I'm also not trying to babysit 2 small kids that I don't know for free all day. So, was I the jerk here? Update. Thank you everyone for your advice and awards. I didn't expect to gain any traction, and I took my kids on a nice forest walk and came back to a bunch of comments. After my boyfriend got home, we talked about it more, and after reading a lot of your comments, my boyfriend said that he didn't think I was in the wrong to call, he just thought that could have been the reason why she was glaring. He's glad I took care of the kids. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk, or is their neighbor? Please let us know. A 3 and a 4-year-old running around the neighborhood by themselves? Parent of the year right here. Lady has to walk to her car for her ID and has a fit. Rude lady came in and asked for a $1,000 money order. The system comes up with the screen for me to scan her ID because any money order that is over $1,000 or more requires an ID. So I asked the lady for her ID. Since when do I need an ID for a money order? Me. Well, since the money order is for $1,000, our system requires we have your ID in order to proceed with the transaction. But my ID is in the car. Well, I can't continue the transaction without your ID. But my picture is on my debit card. I'm sorry, ma'am, but that doesn't count. I have to have an actual ID. Well, we can just do 2 separate money orders for $500 each. Me. No, ma'am, we can't do that either. Our store policy states that all money orders for the same person must be done on a single transaction, so I would still need your ID. Rude lady storms off. I go back to the service desk and help get the line down over there when rude lady comes in and asks my manager what the most she can get on a money order is without her ID, and my manager tells her $999. Someone else needed a money order, so I headed back to the money center to help them, and rude lady follows shortly behind. I finish up with the other customer, and rude lady comes back to the counter. I need a money order for $1,000. Okay, can I see your ID? Here. She slams her ID on the counter. I can't believe you made me walk all the way out to my car over $1. Me. I'm sorry, ma'am. That's just the policy. Rude lady continues talking about me to herself. I just ignore her and finish up the money order. Me. All right, there you go. Thank you and have a great night. Rude lady starts to walk off, but decides to be a complete jerk instead. She slammed the money order on the counter and began yelling at me. Put it in my hand. Put it in my hand since you want to sit there and treat me like a dog. What? I just decided it would be best to ignore her and keep walking back to the service desk. Wrong. That's right. Walk away, you nasty jerk. Me. Excuse me? Let me go grab my manager real quick. Rude lady ran out of the store before I could make it around the corner to my manager. I went and told my manager, and she tried to chase her down because she's not afraid of getting fired for talking back to a customer, and she doesn't let anyone treat her employees like that. Unfortunately, she didn't catch her. All of that over having to walk out to your car in the parking lot because you didn't have your ID. I will never understand people. Yes, I want a coffee without any coffee. Years ago, I worked for the big Canadian coffee and donut shop, mostly working the evening shift. If you aren't familiar with Canadian brand coffee shop, the cream and sugar are dispensed by a machine that is calibrated to the amount determined by corporate. If you're used to ordering at the fancy green place or the running donut place, the number of sugar and creams you order may need to change depending on how much you actually want. One night, we had these 3 bikers drive in, and you could tell they had been on the road for a while. Their ringleader was your stereotypical biker. Tall, wide shoulders, big beard, covered in leather. His friends there were shorter, but otherwise still had the whole tough but tired look going on. My coworker was in the back working soup and kitchen, but it's only 3 people and it's been a slow night. No worries, just need to get these tired boys some caffeine and wish them a good night. Ringleader. I want an extra large 12 and 12. Me. Are you sure? Did I stutter? Me. Okay, but that's only his friend. Did he stutter? No, he did not. So off I went to make him exactly what he asked for. Grabbed a cup and put it under the sugar dispenser while I pressed the ×3 button 4 times. 12 XL shots of sugar. Then I went over to the cream dispenser and did the same thing. Now, fun fact. The cream and sugars are measured to dispense 1/12 of the cup size you're selecting. So by the time all 12 shots of creamer were dispensed, the cup was basically full. I stirred the creamy sugar mixture around before I poured an itty-bitty splash of coffee in his cup, just enough to bring it up to the safety line of the cup. I tried asking him if he wanted me to heat it up or anything, but I basically got the exact runaround from him and his friend. Obviously, the guy knew what he wanted, and he didn't need me to tell him what he was ordering. They grabbed the rest of their order and drove out into the night. Now, you would think that was the end of the story. The big angry biker man got his nasty sugar cream drink and left me sitting there wondering if the rest of the world had been drinking their coffee wrong this entire time. But no, I was lucky enough to be working the next afternoon when he came back in. Mr. Ringleader came back in all by himself the next day and shuffled up to the counter. I could tell he must have been embarrassed because his voice was a lot softer this time. He knew he messed up. The glorious aftermath is that he apologized and confirmed that the drink had been utterly disgusting. Turns out he was used to ordering from the fancy green coffee place, and they use way smaller measurements for their cream and sugar. Once I knew where he was used to ordering from, I made him the approximately same drink using our measurements, roughly a triple, and sent him on his way. I only wish I could have seen his face when he took that first sip. Am I the jerk for not giving my dad and his new family access to my vacation home? I'm 34, and my wife and I bought a vacation home in a resort town in Florida a few years ago. The real estate market is ridiculous right now, and we just saw our neighbor there's house sell for double what they paid for it 3 years ago. We don't have plans to sell too anytime soon, but we're not totally eliminating the possibility either. We aren't there full-time, so we've let my brother and some of my friends and their significant others without kids stay there from time to time so they can have a cheap vacation. My dad remarried a woman a lot younger than him last year, and she has 2 boys ages 12 and 10. I've only met them a couple of times, and while they were nice, they're extremely high energy and always running around all over the place. My dad asked if he and his new wife could take the kids there for a week while we aren't there, and after thinking about it, my wife and I decided against it. We love how nice it is and don't want kids there possibly ruining anything. So we told him if he can get a babysitter and wants to take the wife, that's fine, but we're keeping the place child-free as a safety precaution to keep it in good shape. He was really mad and kept accusing me of not accepting our new family. I'm sorry, but I don't view those kids as family despite that they're technically my stepbrothers, given I was over 30 when he married her. He's still mad, and his new wife, who I've never had a strong opinion about, called me pleading too, saying how the boys could really use a vacation and how it could be a great way to build a relationship with them too. I told her sorry, but it was a joint decision between me and my wife, and that's final. This morning, I woke up to another long text from her, and I'm annoyed, but also figured I'd get some other perspectives on if I'm being unreasonable because my brother thinks I should give them a trial run, but essentially said at the end of the day it's my call, but that he would. Edit. The no kids rule is applied to anyone who stayed there. Currently, we've only let my brother and 3 of our good couple friends stay there. It's not a place we're advertising to all of our friends or relatives. Well, who do you agree with? OP or his dad? Please let us know. Your property, your decision. Tell your dad to buzz off. I recruited an unwitting army to annoy a jerk. Back in the early 90s, my friend, I'll call him Lou because that's his name, was selling his RX-7 via an ad in the old print Auto Trader. It came out every Thursday, so that first weekend was critical for sales. The very first guy that came to see it on Saturday said he wanted to buy it after driving it. Of course, he had to finance, so they couldn't finish the sale during the weekend. Lou was worried about losing all the bites from the new ad, so he asked for a deposit of $500. The guy wrote a check. Lou told the rest of the callers that weekend that it was sold, and unfortunately, didn't ask for their numbers in case it fell through. This story predates caller ID availability in my area by a couple of years, so these leads were gone. As you surely expect by now, the guy flakes on Monday, and Lou deposits the check. Payment stopped. Big surprise. Sitting around my apartment, we schemed revenge, but all we had to go on was the check. Lucky for karma, there was a phone number printed on it. Our first idea was to write a little program to dial his number repeatedly from my modem, but that would be easily stopped and probably get us in direct trouble. Then Lou got a page from his work. This was back in the one-way pager days. You call the pager's dedicated phone number, it sounds a tone, then you punch digits for the number you want to be sent to the pager. The person with the pager receives the number you entered and, presumably, calls it. Everyone with a pager made sure that people who needed to get a hold of them had the number for their pager. You'd see pager numbers in print and TV ads all the time for various services. Boom! Angelic choir sings. Heavenly light goes off. Lou's pager number and my pager number had the same prefix, middle 3 digits. What if we randomly dial numbers with that prefix and page them all to this guy's number? So we order a pizza, open some beers, and start looking through the yellow pages at locksmiths and tow truck services to find more pager prefixes. We wind up with a dozen or so. After that, it's half an hour of coding in ye olde Borland C++. I put together a program that would cycle through our list of known prefixes and add a random final 4 digits to get a random pager. It calls the pager's number, pauses, then dials this jerk's number, and throws a 911 suffix on there for good measure, which is something people with pagers understand to indicate an emergency of some kind. The whole thing was just generating different strings of numbers with different pager prefixes. The commas made pauses since you'd need to connect to the paging service before you can enter the message. Make string, send to modem, wait for no carrier, hang up, repeat. We start eating the pizza and let it fly. I was very picky about my devices, so my modem was a US Robotics Courier. You could set an S register to control how long it would sound each tone when dialing. Uber nerds like myself would keep tinkering with that to get as fast as possible while still being recognized by the phone service. It was very fast. It could run through 4 pages per minute, so this guy would get 240 calls an hour. We just watched it run and laughed our butts off. We realized pretty early on that we didn't really know if it was working, so we wandered down to the 7-Eleven and called him from a payphone, just in case he could somehow trace it or the popo were on the case and watching. A man answered and I said, "Hello, I got a page at this number." I heard an audible sigh and then he just hung up. Gold. We ended up running it for a few hours, then let it go quiet for a few days. Then we scheduled it to start dialing the middle of the night every few nights. Plus, we'd fire it up by hand randomly whenever we had a party. We checked again from the 7-Eleven after a week, and it went to an answering machine, which did the rapid tone at the end of the greeting to indicate the tape was full. We reasoned that the line was still ringing anyway, so we kept at it for another month or so. Eventually, we got the disconnected warning when we made one of our regular checkups. I'm sure he just changed the number. I like to think about that guy answering the phone after a few days of silence when we started it up. I can vividly imagine his response at the, "Did someone page me to this number?" as he slams the phone down and then it rings again a few seconds later. Or, of course, coming home from work and having an answering machine full of random people asking about being paged. And yeah, we annoyed several thousand people into calling this guy by the end. But each of those people was only put out for a single call. A cost? Yes, but a necessary one for justice. Have you ever heard of a pager before this story? Or did you have no clue what it was? Please let us know. Oh, I bet none of them knew. Whether or not they'll admit it in the comments is another question. Random entitled mom thinks she has authority over my hair. Cast. We've got me, 15, male. We've got entitled mom, and we've got her cute kid. This happened about a month ago, before Ontario went into lockdown again. It was nice that day, so I decided to take a walk around my suburb. For context, since the lockdown started, I've been growing my hair to emulate my musical idols from the 70s, like Keith Emerson and John Michael Jarre. As of now, I have fairly long hair that I'm very proud of and intend to keep it growing. Today though, since it was pretty windy, I wore my Legend of Zelda baseball cap to hold my hair in. Although it's obvious from the back, it can be a little hard to tell that I have long hair from the front when I wear it. Anyways, let's get to the story proper. So I'm walking down the street in this neighborhood that I haven't really explored yet. I round the corner and come face to face with entitled mom and her daughter. Entitled mom is in her late 30s and has no defining Karen features. Her kid is about 8 and has very nice long hair. I'm minding my own business when the kid starts talking. Mommy, look, he has a Zelda cap. I stop walking, still facing the two. Kid starts talking again. Can I see it? I'm very tall, so I can see why this girl has trouble seeing the cap. I don't mind her looking at my cap. I think it's very nice, so I take it off and lower it to her level while keeping a firm grip on it. The kid loves it, but her mother's expression goes from neutral to annoyed. She talks to me for the first time. Why haven't you cut your hair? I'm confused at first. What? You know confinement is over. You can go get a haircut now. I try to be as straightforward as possible. I'm sorry, ma'am. My hair is supposed to be that way. Her face grows more and more annoyed. What do you mean your hair is supposed to be that way? Boys have short hair and girls have long hair. Boys can't have hair as long as girls, otherwise it just looks ugly. I honestly don't know why I said that, but I guess that unconsciously I really wanted to annoy this woman. Actually, my hair is longer than my sister's, which is true. Hair doesn't correspond to gender. Anyone can have any hairstyle they want. She was getting really mad at this point. That is preposterous. Your parents should be ashamed of raising such unruly kids. Since your parents are too bad to give you a haircut, I'm going to do you a favor by giving you the funds to do so. I don't know what she was thinking, but she pulled out $30 from her purse and handed it to me. Since she insulted me and my parents, I was ready to just run with the cash and buy a classic rock magazine full of scraggly dudes with long hair, but she put an end to my plans. That should be enough to get you a haircut across the street. She nodded to a hairdressing salon a few meters away. I'm friends with the lady there, so if you tell her entitled mom sent you, she'll know exactly what I want. Also, I'll make sure to call tonight in case you ran. By this point, I too was getting really angry and wanted this whole crap to end, especially since the kid also looked like she wanted out of the conversation. No ma'am, I will not take your money to get a haircut just because you personally think I'm an eyesore. I control my hair just as you do yours. I'm sorry if you think I look ugly, but I like my hair, and so do my friends and family. I hope in the future you'll be a little more open-minded about other people's decision. I knew there was nothing I could immediately do to change this woman's mind, so I just turned my back and walked away. Entitled mom yelled a few more insults at my hair before I heard the kid tell her mother to move along. In the end, my hair is still long, and I did not meet this entitled mom again. Have you ever had someone insult your hairstyle? If so, what did you do about it? Please let us know. I've been thinking of trying that bob hairstyle. Let us know in the comments if I should try it or not. How I got fired and refused to be rehired for a job I never even had. I had a conference I have to attend every 6 months they called a command symposium. We were a small unit by Army standards, but were spread out over the world. I enjoyed meeting with my other senior leaders during the day, but I am an extreme introvert, so I know that I need time to recharge after a day of talking to people. I stay at the same hotel and eat at the same bar, which is a short walk from the hotel. I walk to the bar when I don't have working dinners with the other senior leaders. The bar remembers me mainly because I watch sports and read a book while I have a few beers and eat dinner. Now this is a big bar with many tables, about 20 pool tables and 10 dartboards and a huge wraparound bar. outdoor patio and dance floor with a stage where they have live music. They probably have 50 TVs, so they have every sport that is televised on somewhere in the bar. And the food is really good with a pretty good variety for a bar. During my third or fourth conference there, I head over to the bar for dinner and football. After I eat and have a beer, I head to the bathroom while the bartender pours me another beer. Halfway to the bathroom, I get the dreaded, "Excuse me." You know how when you get those words, you can tell if it's, "I really need some help," or "I really do apologize," or "You better recognize your better's peasant"? This was the latter. I turn and see a table of 6 women from mid-20s to mid-30s staring at me. They were dressed fairly well, so I assume they just got off work and hit the bar for drinks. It was not hard to see "better than you" in their eyes. Me. Yes? The mob of Karens all started talking at the same time. "You need to take our order. You've just been sitting at the bar. Get your face out of that book. You need to do your job. You need to quit drinking on the job. You need to respect your customers." I had a red button-up, untucked shirt on, but no logo and jeans. The staff wore bright red polos with huge logos over the chest pocket and black jeans. Only an idiot would mistake me for staff, and I don't make time for idiots. Me in my command military NCO voice. "Stop!" to chop off their yammering. Just about the whole bar turned to look over at me, facing the Karen Hydra. I was a bit louder than I should have been, probably. The Karens looked at me with their eyes going wide. "I don't work here," I said in a normal voice and went to the bathroom. Looking back now, I think the way I said "stop" escalated the whole thing, since I said it in the same manner I would have to a bunch of privates, and they were better than me after all. When I came out of the bathroom after washing my hands, very important, not for the story, but just important to wash your hands, I see the Karen horde screeching and wildly motioning at the manager. I had actually met him a couple of times, and we knew each other by name when I came into town. Really good guy, and you could tell his staff liked him. One of the Karen sirens yells and points, "That's him!" and they start squawking again. The manager waves me over, and I see the crooked smile that he's hiding from the Karen ogres. Cool manager. "OP, did you refuse to serve these ladies?" Me, thinking ladies is a loose term for people that use their left cheek as their brain. "Yes." The screech of the Karens begins again in earnest. Cool manager. "They're demanding I fire you." Me. "Okay." Cool manager. "Okay, then you are fired and don't have to finish out your shift." I pause for a second and look at how smug the Karens are, and I figure cool manager is cool, so why not? Me. "Do I get severance pay?" "Sorry, no." "Any workers' comp benefits?" "No." "What about medical and dental?" "Not available for you. Sorry." "What about my final paycheck?" Without missing a beat, CM says, "We will be sending you what we owe you in the mail." "How about a severance beer?" "I think we can work that out." I reach out my hand and shake the manager's hand and say, "It's been a pleasure working with you, cool manager. I wish we could keep you." And with that, I went back to my spot at the bar. A couple of the people around me asked what happened, and I told them, and they had a good laugh. A few minutes later, the bartender brings me a beer before I finished the one I had and said, "Cool manager said your beers are free tonight as your severance package." She laughs, and the people around me that saw what happened or heard about it laugh too. I may have 4 beers at the most over the night if a game is on I like, so there was no danger of me trying to drink the bar dry. They had 3 bartenders, and I always had a fresh beer before the one I was drinking was finished, and they poured my old beer out, so my beer was always cold. I pace myself when I'm out, and it can take me about 30 to 45 minutes to finish 1 pint. That should be the end of the story, but a Karen has to be self-important and would not let it go. More people have come in the bar by now, and I had almost forgotten the whole thing. About an hour after the incident, cool manager comes up to me and says, "You are not going to believe this. Can you come back with me to their table?" Me. "Sure." We go back to the table with the Karen spawns. I thought it might be an apology, and I was going to be like, "No worries, mix-ups happen." But I did not understand the nature of a flock of Karens in the wild that did not get the respect they are entitled to. When we get to the table, cool manager starts with a straight face. "They have asked me to give you your job back if you will apologize to them for your rudeness as a server. They feel sorry for you knowing that you need this job for your medical bills." I cock an eyebrow at him, but he remains in character. He gives me the same crooked smile. I told you, this guy was cool. One of the minor minion Karens at the table says,
We understand how tough it must be for someone in your position to be able to hold a job.
Then a major Karen minion says,
You know, because of your age and all, and you can only be a waiter at your skill set.
Well, I had been in the army for almost 20 years at that time. Demon Lord Karen said,
If you just apologize to us, then we can use our influence to get your job back. After all, we see you just sitting at the bar getting drunk off your last paycheck.
Cool Manager is struggling to keep a straight face. OP, do you want to apologize and get your non-existent job back? I look at the coven of evil Karens. Yep, they missed it. Me. Cool Manager, I think I'm going to stick to the opportunities that I have already and not ask for my non-existent job back. Whoosh, right over their upturned noses. Cool Manager, I understand. Before he could finish his sentence, Lord Sauron Karen stands up and gets in my face.
You better take that job offer back. We are putting our reputations on the line for you. You need our influence in this town if you want to make it here. I will personally make sure that you do not work in this town again if you do not take this job back, you worm.
I used worm since she said some other things that are not very appropriate. If you can imagine, Devil went down to Georgia, where a band of demons joined right in. You got the picture of how the other Karens came in behind their Karen High Priestess. I looked her in the eye and very quietly said, matter-of-factly, I don't give a flying fart in a windstorm about your opinion. Influence, or whatever comes out of that. Male rooster, garage, you call a mouth. So close it before I park my car in it. Little over the top, but I was done with them. I look over Kraken Karen's shoulder and say to Cool Manager, who's pretty wide-eyed, I'm going to refuse the job I never had. I'm shaking a little from the adrenaline, but I turn and walk back to the bar and my fresh beer. The entire bar had seen this Karen screech, but since nothing really happened outside of the Karen's piercing wail of being disrespected, they went back to whatever it was they were doing. I mean, the Karen's table was in the middle of the bar, so it was like a stage for them. I calmed down quickly, as I really don't care what they think. Besides, it's a pretty good football game. They're still mad, and they say some things behind my back that I tune out. Cool Manager meets me back at the bar and apologizes. He comps my whole meal, and I told him that he didn't have to do that, and we have a quick laugh now that it's over. He even tells me that they still didn't know I never worked here. He said that he knows I like to relax in his bar, but he would like to do one thing if I let him. I was apprehensive, but said okay. Cool Manager goes up on the stage and talks to live band that is warming up. He grabs a mic and says something like this. We are proud of military and would like to recognize one of our patrons with almost 20 years of service. Would OP please stand up? Once again, I'm an introvert and do not like this, but I like the Cool Manager, so I do it. I made sure not to look at the Karen table, but everyone around me did. Tonight, he got confused as one of our servers, and I had to fire him. The entire bar starts laughing. I tried to hire him back, but he refused my job offer. More laughter. I guess he enjoys being the non-commissioned officer in charge of one of the largest medical research facilities in Texas. More laughter. We here at the bar want to thank you for your continuing service. The bar raises glasses, and I raise mine back and sit back down. The Karens leave very quickly after that, since the entire bar is giving them the stink eye. There was no doubt who Cool Manager was talking about, since they were literally the center of attention for a few minutes with me standing next to their table. I have to shake a bunch of hands and get offered drinks, which I decline since I do have to work the next day. Finally, Cool Manager comes over, and I asked him why he did that. I was fine, and he didn't have to do that for me. Again, I like just relaxing by reading and watching the game with a beer. Cool Manager. I did it for two reasons. No one should get treated the way they treated you. The second is, do you think that they will put a bad review on our page now? If they try, could you see the blowback they would get? I could not fault him for that. I went back a couple more times when I had a conference in the area, but I made sure to never wear a red shirt in there ever again. Am I the jerk for refusing to move out of the house now that I'm pregnant? I live in my childhood home, which I own the deed to. I am the sole owner. I inherited it from my grandmother, who raised my siblings and I. She left it on the understanding that as the oldest of four, if she passed, I would use the house and whatever else she left to get guardianship of my younger half-siblings and help them reach adulthood. I'm 26. My siblings are 20, 16, and 13. Grandma passed a few years ago, and I did what she asked regarding getting guardianship and moving back into the house and taking care of my siblings. The house is an old farmhouse and it has a barn on the premises. My grandma converted the barn into a guest house about a decade ago. The idea was that when family came over, they could use it, but over time it became more of a very large junk room. There's still a bed and a kitchenette and a bathroom, but none of it has been used in years, and I can't even say for sure that it all still works. And even if it does, you have to wade through all sorts of crap to access it all. Someone broke into it a few years back, so there's not even a lock on the door right now, and I can't shell out for renovations. I've recently found out that I am pregnant and told my siblings. My sister, the 20-year-old, says she will not, under any circumstances, live with a baby. I offered to help her find a place. She said that she won't be moving out, as this is her home too, and she has every right to be here. I agreed with her, but said that the baby has a right to be here too, and asked what solution she could come up with. She then said the barn is an option, and offered to help me move in. I said no, the barn is a glorified junk room that's only been home to spiders in the last few years. I'm not touching it, and I have a perfectly good room in the house with an adjoining room that could be easily made into a nursery. And as the guardian of the two younger siblings, I need to be under the same roof as them. She said that it won't take long to make the barn livable again, and I'm being a drama queen about the state of it. That the three of them are old enough to live apart, and the barn is about 20 seconds from the house anyway, so I'm making too big of a deal about the separate roofs thing. And the barn is the only way to make sure she and our siblings don't have to hear the baby crying all the time. I said that the baby will cry, but that's hardly going to be the only noise in this house, and she can't expect me to live in a barn because of it. She said she shouldn't have to live with a baby, and I'm selfish for making her do so. I said she's welcome to move out of the house, either into the barn or just elsewhere. She then accused me of trying to kick her out, which I was not doing, and told her so, and called me a selfish jerk for not moving into the barn. We haven't spoken since. Am I the jerk? Info. I have never even asked her to pay rent, but she does pay for the occasional bill or food shop. However, she doesn't have the money to move out unless it involved multiple roommates. Edit. I'm not kicking her out. She's a student. We have agreed she can stay here while she studies, and Grandma left me the house so all of my siblings would always have a home. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her sister? Please let us know.
I know you said you don't want to kick her out because she's a student, but I really hope you consider it.
You aren't going anywhere for a while. This story involves a rather popular bar in a major northern UK city. This involved a male Karen. It was early in the day and the bar wasn't open until 7 p.m. that evening. I arrived at the bar, my task for the day being to await a scaffold being delivered and erected, and then use the said scaffold to remove some old CCTV cameras and upgrade them to much better ones. I have a full set of keys for the bar, and the bar has its own private car park, which is protected by locking drop-down bollards. They're not automatic or anything fancy like that, so I have to pull up on the street outside, lock my van up, walk over, and drop the bollards. Usually with a mandatory soaking, as the pits they are installed in invariably fill up with rainwater, and then finally I pull my van inside. I usually then raise the bollards to stop others parking in there. The place in question is extremely close to the Social Security Benefits Office, and the bollards were indeed installed because their clientele were constantly using it rather than paying to park like the rest of the population. So this morning I pulled in, got out of my van, and dropped the bollards so I could park in the car park. The scaffold truck with the team on was about 20 minutes behind me, so I had time to go in and have a quick walk to the coffee shop just around the corner. Unfortunately, just after I dropped the bollards, male Karen drove up in his BMW X5, pulled into the car park, and parked. I followed him in and also parked. I tapped on his window and told him it was a private car park and he needed to leave. He was on a hands-free call and he simply gestured me away. So I tapped again and he wound down his window and shouted, "I'm on a phone call," wound his window up and began ignoring me. Although I could have been really malicious and locked him in, I didn't. I simply walked around the corner and got my coffee, leaving the bollards down so he could leave if he wanted. About 5 minutes later, I came back, coffee in hand. He was still there, still on the phone, and I could see the scaffold lorry at the bottom of the hill making its way up. Again, I tapped on his window and he mouthed, "Buzz off," at me. The lorry arrived. I gestured them to reverse into the small car park, which they did. It blocked up the whole car park. The team of 3 rather big muscular scaffolders jumped out and started unloading and building the scaffold. A fairly big affair made of around 50 bars and over 4 levels of the back of the building. 10 minutes passed, and the first levels were starting to appear like a rather fascinating Meccano set. I don't know the first thing about this stuff, so I just watched in awe as they flung together bars and planks. Male Karen finished his important call and then got out of his rather fancy X5 and walked across to the social services building. Now I presume he thought we'd all be done by the time he got out, so he could just jump in his car and drive off. Almost an hour passed. The scaffold got taller and wider, and the lorry got emptier. But there was still a whole level to go up on top yet, and as they got higher, the build speed slows down. I gave them a hand by passing parts up, but I couldn't actually do anything else because I wasn't skilled or qualified. Male Karen came back after about an hour and said to me, "You have to let me out." I said back, "Mate, you aren't going anywhere. I tried to tell you, but you told me to buzz off." He started to get aggressive and pushed me, at which point the scaffolders came down and started to back me up. They looked scary. He didn't. He jumped in his X5 and sat there on his phone. 10 minutes later, the police rolled up. Apparently, he had phoned them because we were blocking him in and had threatened him. I talked calmly to the police officer and explained what had actually happened, explaining that with it being a bar, the whole incident was on CCTV. I gave them my details and the details of my company, and the scaffolders did the same. Then the second officer started checking our vehicles. I thought this was a bit curious, but whatever. So the first officer then asked the scaffolders if they could indeed move and let the guy out, and they obliged, although it took them a couple of minutes to throw some ties over their load. We were all very compliant, although the officer did tell us off. It is an offense to knowingly obstruct someone or block someone in a car park or parking space, even on private land. Male Karen then got in his BMW and reversed out through the gates, at which point the second officer gestured him to pull the car up on the road and get out of it. So it transpired after a little more questioning that Male Karen had neither road tax, insurance, nor did he even have a driving license. The reason the police had to let him get out of the car park was because no crime was being committed until he attempted to drive in it. Once he attempted that, he was in contravention of the Road Traffic Act and they could seize his car. Thus, the final piece of this story involves the police sending him walking down to the bus stop whilst the second officer drove his 2-year-old BMW X5 to the impound yard where he would have to pay a lot of money to get it back, and could only get it back if someone with a valid license and insurance went to collect it. I found out later that he had paid for a £2.70 parking ticket. He would have been over £1,100 better off that day after the cost of getting the car back, plus the hefty fine he was given for driving without the correct documentation or qualification. Sweep the side alley until it's spotless? You got it, boss. A couple of summers ago, I took a part-time job as a server at a local pub/restaurant. I had a full-time job, so this was just for experience and to pick up some tip money on the side. The pub had been closed for a few years after the old owner couldn't afford it anymore, so when the new owners picked it up and got it ready for opening again, the town was pretty excited. It's a bit of a town landmark right in the middle of our main street. I applied as soon as I found out and ended up getting hired. I was one of the younger servers alongside a few older ones. Most of us were women, and the older servers really looked out for us inexperienced ones. Overall, the others on the team were really nice, save for a couple of nasty ones. My new boss, Gary, not his actual name, was, well, not as great. Gary's favorite saying was, "If you have time to learn, you have time to clean." He thought if we took even a second to catch our breaths, he was losing money from us slacking off. On slow nights, he would find menial, pointless tasks for us to complete. Wipe the bar counter, even though it's been wiped 3 times in the past half hour already. Reorganize the menus, even though they're already perfectly organized. Fill up more condiment cups, even though there's already 50 salsa cups ready to go. Stuff like that. The most tedious task, especially in the early months of the summer, was sweeping the side alley that leads to the patio. There were these massive maple trees along the path, and they would drop leaves and seeds like crazy, especially on windy days. One afternoon in early June, there were only a handful of us working. It gets slow, and I get assigned the sweeping task. I sweep up the back alleyway as much as I can, but the wind is blowing, and the trees just keep dumping more and more seeds onto the path. I do my best until a coworker calls me back inside to help serve tables. She didn't want me missing out on tips, bless her. I see the table, get their orders, and start entering them in. Just then, Gary storms up to me. "What are you doing?" Me. entering table 15's order. Why?
The side alley is a mess. I don't pay you to slack off.
Me. I swept up as much as I could before this table walked in. It's a really windy day. That's why it keeps getting full of leaves and seeds. You're more than welcome to check the compost bin for how much I already did sweep up. Gary.
No, we don't finish things halfway here. You're going back out there and finishing your job. I want it to be spotless. Linda,
Not her real name.
can take table 15.
Gary then switched table 15 from my account to Linda, an older server's account. Linda and I got along great. She worked as both a server and a bartender, and used to be a general manager with another restaurant chain. She decided to join this team after her retirement as a part-time hobby. She taught me a whole lot while I worked there, and I'm grateful to have met her. Linda. I'll hang on to your share of the tips. Best not to make Gary angry. Me. He really wants me to make it spotless? Does he know how impossible that is? I'd have to be out there all shift. That's when Linda gave me a smile and the light bulb turned on in my head. I still had 2 hours left in my shift, and it was going to be right into dinner rush. I grabbed the broom and dustpan and got to work. I would sweep as much as I could, but every so often another strong breeze would come by and hundreds more helicopter seeds would flutter to the ground. I kept going. At this point, it started to get busier. A lineup soon began to form out at the door. Linda was taking care of tables, but very soon it became clear that the other servers needed someone else to deal with everyone. Linda let them know what was up, and most of them, who tolerated Gary at best and hated him at worst, understood. I kept on sweeping. Like Sisyphus and the boulder, the task was never ending. I swooped up a pile after pile after pile of leaves and seeds to no avail. After 45 minutes or so, the side door opened suddenly to reveal a red-faced Gary.
Why aren't you in there serving customers?
Me gestures at the alleyway. As if the gods themselves had heard the malicious compliance brewing, another strong breeze shook more seeds onto the partially cleared alley, right in front of Gary's face. The look on his face was priceless. He told me, in a quieter voice, to get back inside and start taking orders. I handed the broom off to him, and he began to sweep and sweep and sweep. The other servers and I had a good laugh about it inside, and I managed to make decent tips that night. Gary realized he couldn't exactly firing me for following his orders perfectly, and ended up being more relaxed about the side alley. No one really cares about some leaves and seeds on the ground, as long as they're not obstructing anyone. I ended up working there for the rest of the summer before quitting. I hear the pub had to be passed on to the new owners after Gary's disorganization got the better of him. My next shift, I found a broken broom in the garage. I'd like to think it was the work of Gary, red in the face and exhausted from battling against Mother Nature. Am I the jerk for losing it after finding out my wife let her sister and her boyfriend stay at my late wife's cabin? My late wife, while she was still with us, lived a healthy life and always loved spending time traveling and going on road trips. She was always an outdoor person, although she had a demanding career. She had a high-paying job while I was earning money that barely paid for bills. We were married for 5 years. We bought a cabin together that we used for holidays and weekends. After her passing, I couldn't set a foot in it for a whole year. Everything was the way she had left it. I don't go there often, but only on big occasions when I need to feel closer to her. My family suggested I sell it, but I couldn't bring myself to do that. The idea of selling it makes me feel like I was losing her all over again, so I left it as it is. I married my now wife 6 months ago. I have 2 stepkids that are filling my days with joy and comfort. But lately, my in-laws have been having issues, specifically my sister-in-law. She lost her job, and she and her boyfriend had nowhere to live. We've invited them to our place for 2 months, then my brother-in-law took them in. My wife, days ago, told me brother-in-law had an argument with his sister and kicked her and boyfriend out. I asked when that happened, and she told me about 2 weeks ago. I then asked where her sister and her boyfriend were staying, and she took her time to answer. I asked what's wrong, and she flat out told me that her sister's been staying at my late wife's cabin for 2 weeks now. I was stunned when I heard, and I asked her for more clarification. She said she gave her sister a copy of the key to the cabin to stay there till she finds a job. Then proceeded to say she didn't tell me because it wasn't a huge deal. I couldn't help but lose my temper. I told her she had no right to hide this from me and let her sister into the cabin knowing how I'd feel about it. She said my reaction was the exact reason why she hid it from me. I called her selfish and inconsiderate of my feelings, but she argued about wanting to help her younger sister and said I was the selfish one for not helping family during tough times. The kids walked into the kitchen. I just stopped arguing and walked out. My wife followed me. I demanded she call her sister and tell her to move out and hand over the key. My wife looked shocked, saying she expected me to react this way, but not go as far as to demand that her sister moves out, and called me cruel for making her look bad to family. We kept arguing till her sister moved out and brought the key. My wife packed her things and went to stay with her parents. She told me that my late wife was obviously more important to me than my family and that she won't come home till I get my priorities straight. I haven't visited the cabin after her sister left. I haven't been feeling well these days, and I'm not ready to go see how the place looks now. I just need time to calm myself down to be able to go there. My wife is at her parents' house, and she took the kids with her. I miss the kids, and she won't let me speak to them, which is another problem because my heart literally feels heavy when I'm away from them. I miss them so much and can't stand the house without them there.
This is one of the saddest stories we've ever read. My heart is broken right now.
Me too, Karen. Me too. My Karen wife cheated. I got revenge. Central characters. I, 30 male. My best friend, Ace, 30 male. And my jerk ex, who I was married to for 5 years, 28 female. We were married right out of college after our graduate and undergrad respectively. Ace is single. Story. 2 years ago, I worked at a startup in South Carolina and put in long hours that seemed to have a strain on our marriage. While our love lives were good, I felt my ex was being distant at times and asked her about it, only to be reassured that there was nothing wrong and she understood the long, hard hours. I both liked and hated this job. It was flexible in the hours, but I ended up working way more than a traditional 9 to 5 for similar pay at the time. Ace and I are the best of friends of over 13 years since high school. There are a couple of issues we have polar opposite stances on and are really passionate about our positions, but in general, we get along really well. One night, I invited him over for beer, and we got a little too drunk and ended up arguing a lot over this issue. It didn't get physical, but some really harsh words were said by both parties, and it ended with him leaving the house and me visibly angry. The next morning, I called him up first thing, and we both apologized to each other, and that was that. However, my ex was unaware of this and came up to me bad-mouthing Ace. I thought this was a little atypical of her since she doesn't do that normally, but chalked it off to her being comforting and affectionate towards me. I told her it wasn't a big deal and that Ace and I were fine and left for work. Now, in what I can only describe as winning the Powerball, I met Ace at the gas station on the way to work. He normally works from home and was on his way to visit his dad for the weekend. We decided to have a couple of beers to make up for the previous night and headed to a small quiet bar I like to visit. There, the unexpected happens, and Ace receives a call from my ex. She asks if he was alone, and he says yes, looking perplexed. This lovely woman then proceeds to apologize for my behavior the previous night and asks if she can make it up to him. He pretended that he couldn't hear her and puts it on loudspeaker for both of us to hear and asks her to repeat. My ex proceeds to proposition him for hooking up, using the cliched excuses of being lonely and how I work long hours, and that how I wouldn't find out given our, me and Ace, falling out. She then repeats all the bad-mouthing she had done earlier in the day to me with a caveat that I said all of those things. Now, my ex is no Einstein, but surely there's no way Ace buys that crap. He tells her that he will call her in a bit because of a client and hangs up. I was devastated with my face buried in my palms because I knew our marriage was over. I have a few strict boundaries in life, and I don't care if it's a 5-year or a 50-year marriage. Cheating equals divorce. The only thing was, if I could somehow get out of it without losing much, because I knew the alimony would do me over, given that I made nearly 3 times what she made. We didn't have kids, and only little in marital property, and I was okay with losing half the joint account since I was young and there wasn't a whole lot. South Carolina has a fault divorce for adultery, which bars the recipient from any alimony. The issue is that we didn't record the call, and there was pretty much no proof outside of me and friends' word of adultery. So I hatched a plan to allow the cheating to happen. Ace was hesitant because she was my wife at the time, but honestly, I saw red, and that woman was done to me, so I couldn't care less. I wanted evidence of the cheating. Now, I gotta say, Ace managed to keep his cool and come up with the plan that seems so simple it's almost movie-like. We worked out the kinks together and decided that we could not speak of this until everything was done and dusted. Over the next hour, we planned out everything. He would accept her offer and meet my ex shortly after I left for work. I would feign missing a file and return, only to hear sounds and start recording. Then I would catch them in the act, pretend that it was alarming, and cause a fuss. To this day, I think the only reason I was able to act surprised was because I was insanely angry at my ex, so everything just came out naturally. I asked Ace to buzz off forever once I caught them and told my wife that she'd hear from my lawyer. A bluff, I hadn't thought that far. I didn't bring up the bad-mouthing because I felt it would give away the whole plan. Cue my wife pleading and crying, literally begging me to forgive her and that it was a mistake out of desperation and loneliness. I told her I needed some time alone, walked out, drove to the nearest Walmart, and broke down in the parking lot. I hadn't had any time to grieve in nearly a day and had been focused on revenge. Then I called up a local attorney who seemed to have good ratings and told him what I had. I presented it as if I caught them in the act and didn't mention anything about the plan, even to my attorney. Ace and I had figured out earlier that it was technically giving consent, so it wouldn't be adultery, but nobody but us needed to know that, and we were okay with taking it to our graves if we had to. Sketchy? Yes. Deserved? Also yes. At the advice of my attorney, I returned home a couple hours later to pack my stuff and told my ex I'd be living separately and that she could expect divorce papers soon. She continued to bawl her eyes out, and those were genuine tears. I think she was really remorseful, but I didn't give a hoot. In fact, I drove the blade in deep. I reminded her of some of our fondest memories in college before our marriage, our honeymoon, some of the things I had done for her, etc., and how she repaid me by cheating with my best friend. It was a double-edged sword, because I started tearing up a bit, but I think it needed to be said. I ended it with a, "I hope y'all do the right thing," and left. I probably shouldn't have talked to her as suggested by my attorney, but hey, I had to make her feel like the jerk she was. I don't know if she was genuinely remorseful, or if my words stung her, or if she just broke internally, but she did not contest the divorce. I didn't owe her a cent in alimony and got away with just asset division. Some of our mutual friends caught wind of the cheating and pretty much shunned her from her circles. Her parents were kinda conservative and basically disowned her. Ace and I went cold turkey on her, and this woman basically didn't exist to me. Her standard of living just dropped drastically, and as of December 2020, she lost her job to the lockdown and had moved in with some guy according to one of those mutual friends. I'd be lying if I said the schadenfreude didn't put a smile on my face, but I do feel a bit bad for the woman that I once knew. There is one aspect I feel guilty about though. Our mutual friends who all sided with me after the affair think I'm an innocent and benevolent soul who was cheated on and even forgave his best friend. All my good fortune, next para, is apparently well-deserved, and I have a heart of gold. In reality, I'm quite the conniving guy, who basically ensured she'd be done for. I intend to keep it that way honestly. All they need to know is how much of a jerk my ex was, and I feel 100% justified in my actions. The only case I'd have considered breaking my silence is if anyone judged Ace harshly. However, Ace and I don't have mutual friends, and only our professional lives intersect. Here's the happy ending. The startup I worked for became successful, and I made quite a lot of money when it was sold to a bigger company, none of which went to my ex. Ace is a true bro, and unfortunately lost his job to the lockdown last June. I hooked him up with a better job at my parent company, cause that man deserves everything in the world and more. We still have our disagreements on the issue, except now we just laugh about how it saved me from a horrible marriage. How I got Karen's dog to stop going to the bathroom in my lawn. This happened about a year and a half ago, before the whole lockdown thing. I'd moved into a home a few months ago, and one of the reasons I especially liked this home was because of its nice lot and close parks. Anyway, one day a few months after I moved in, I noticed that there was a piece of doggy doo on the front lawn. I looked around and I didn't see anyone walking their dog. Quite a few of my neighbors had dogs, and I figured one of them had forgotten to pick it up after their dog. I got a plastic bag and threw it in the trash, and I thought nothing of it. Imagine my surprise when, 2 days later, there was another doggy doo on my lawn. This time, I saw an entitled kid down the street walking his dog. I wasn't sure it was him, and his mother seemed kind of nice, so I thought I'd see if it happened again. A few days later, I was about to leave the house when I saw an entitled kid with his dog going to the bathroom right on my lawn. I took out my phone and I recorded a video, and after I got back, I went to his house. Me. "Hello, miss. I'm sorry if I'm interrupting anything, but I was just wondering if we could talk about your son and his dog." Entitled Mom.
Of course. What's up?
Me. I noticed Entitled Kid walking his dog outside my house, and I saw that his dog, went to the bathroom on my lawn, and Entitled Kid never picked it up. He carries bags when he walks his dog, and I'd appreciate if you could ask him to pick up after his dog from now on. Entitled Mom, switching into full entitlement mode.
That's nonsense. My son would never do anything like that. Ask anyone. He's the most well-behaved kid in this neighborhood.
Nee. I'm sorry, miss. I'm not saying your son is a bad kid or anything. I just want him to pick up after his dog. I even have a video of him walking away after his dog went on my lawn. Entitled Mom.
Fine. I will talk to him. Now go away.
She slammed the door in my face, and I thought that would be the end of things. Boy, was I wrong. I didn't see Entitled Kid walking his dog outside my house for a week or so after that. But around 10 days later, I saw another pile on my lawn. I'd had enough now, and I went back to Entitled Mom's house. Me. Miss, this is really unacceptable. You said you'd talk to your son, and now there's another pile of it on my lawn.
That wasn't my son. He's an absolute angel. He said he'd never do it again, and he didn't.
Entitled Kid came to the door. Entitled Mom.
Entitled Kid, did your dog do on this man's lawn again?
Entitled Kid is obviously lying through his teeth.
No, never. That should be enough for you. Now don't come back again.
I was having dinner at my new neighbor's house, and the topic of Entitled Mom came up. My neighbor told me that pretty much everyone hated this lady, as she was always borrowing stuff and claiming she never took it, filling other people's trash cans instead of paying for a special pickup. You get the idea. I finally broke when her doggy dude, not once, not twice, but 3 times on my lawn in the same day. I got an epic idea. This time, I used a plastic bag to pick it up, but instead of throwing it in the trash, I kept it out in my backyard. For the next week, I collected it from the lawn like a scientist, bagging every one. I'm sure if someone saw me, they would have thought I was crazy. After a week, I had around 4 bags of it in my backyard. On Friday night, I went over to her mailbox and absolutely caked it in her doggy doo. I got the sides, the top, the bottom. I completely covered the thing. The next day, I was treated to the sight of her husband hosing their mailbox off with a look of utter disgust on his face. After that, her kid mysteriously stopped walking his dog in front of my house. What would you do in this situation if you had a neighbor who kept letting their dog go to the bathroom in your lawn? Please let us know.
I'd pick it up and throw it at their house like a monkey.
Entitled Mom asks my opinion, doesn't like the answer. The other day, I was at my local reptile and exotic pet store to pick up some things for my small zoo back at home. When I entered the store, a young man was walking around clutching a snake to his chest. He seemed extremely upset and kept walking to the counter before quickly walking away, not saying anything. He appeared to be with 2 women, the girlfriend and her mother, I later found out, who seemed to pick at him every time he walked away from the counter. I personally thought the snake was ill, as the young man seemed to be almost in tears. I looked to one of the employees, but they waved me off and pointed me over another employee, Alex, who was unloading their newest shipment of critters. Alex was super excited to show me some new side-neck turtles that had just gotten in. He and I got into a pretty heated debate about the amount of care needed for turtles in general. I stated pretty loudly that while they were fun to look at and play with, I didn't want another aquatic animal in my house, as they need a lot of specialty care that I was horrible with. I suck with pH levels and testing, and I admit it. It was then that the mother of the girlfriend came over and interrupted our conversation. I will name her Donna.
Hello? I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but can I ask you a personal question, hun?
Donna smiled at me. Sure. I shrug, looking at Alex confused.
So, if I'm hearing you correctly, you don't like turtles, right? So what would you do if your boyfriend decided to go out and buy a turtle and just take it home?
Donna waved her daughter and the boyfriend over. Now, I'm a blunt person, and I wasn't sure where the conversation was going, but I had an idea. Looking between Donna and the upset boyfriend, I answered her question with a few of my own. Would I have to take care of it?
That doesn't matter,
she started. Actually, it does. It's not like a dog that's a joint commitment. If I don't want to take care of a reptile and it belongs to my partner, I'm not forced to. Am I afraid of turtles? I continue.
No, they're just disgusting.
The daughter/girlfriend snarks. She is now Karen. This is the wrong place for you to be shouting that kind of BS. I gesture around at the reptile owners, all of whom look a little insulted. I look at the boyfriend, who's not really paying attention. He's just staring at the snake and rubbing its chin. Finally, able to get a good look at the snake, I'm a little shocked. This isn't like a baby or even a juvenile animal that's normally sold in stores or shows. This is a fully grown and very well taken care of California king snake. Staring at the boyfriend a little more intently now, I notice an eerily similar snake tattoo on his arm with the name Tusker written under it. This is not new ink, this is old. Sweetheart, I coo gently to the boyfriend, how old is Tusker? The boyfriend finally makes eye contact. He's 10. My dad bought him for my 13th birthday. The boyfriend rasps out. Seething, I ask why he brought his baby here. He proceeds to tell me that his girlfriend of a year wants to move in with him, but told him he needed to get rid of his snake. He didn't want to, but Donna insisted he was being selfish, not getting rid of his baby for Karen's comfort.
Why does any of this matter? It's just a stupid snake, and you're supposed to love me.
Karen squeals and stomps her foot. Me. It matters, and your mom obviously thinks it matters since she lied about the circumstances to try and get the answer she wants. Honestly, you say if he loves you, he'll do this. Why isn't it if you love him, you'll get over yourself and try and find a balance? If he had a dog or a cat for that length of time, would you be trying to get rid of it? I snarl at her. Donna steps in.
But it's not. It's a snake.
You're right, which means instead of it being a few more years of joy and companionship from them, he will have Tusker for another 13 to 20 years. Given this conversation, I'm not confident that you'll still be in his life for that long. Karen looked like I had slapped someone. You asked my opinion, I'm telling it to you. I'd dump you long before I got rid of my babies. You came into a reptile store and expected a different answer, which is beyond stupid. Even if the lady or gents here agreed with you, they obviously lost the war since their partners are here shopping for those pets. The boyfriend seemed to get taller as he finally stood up straight. She's right. I'm not leaving Tusker here. I'm taking him home, and you can either come with me or stay here, he rasped.
I'm not going anywhere with that monster,
Karen screamed. Boyfriend turned around and walked out. He got into his car and left the two women there. Apparently, he had driven them there, which took a second for them to realize. Funny when they did. Funnier still when Alex felt the need to point out, I'm not her boyfriend. I'm gay. Good job, Alex. Thanks for the help. What would you do in this situation? Would you get rid of your pet if your significant other demanded it? Please let us know.
Heck no, but I'd get rid of them, to be honest.
Am I the jerk for bringing out regular bread when a pregnant woman ordered garlic-free garlic bread? I'm a waitress at a restaurant. Earlier, a pregnant woman came in with her husband. When I went to get their orders, the woman asked for garlic-free garlic bread. I advised her that our garlic bread was just our regular bread with garlic butter instead of regular butter, and asked her to clarify if she just wanted regular bread. But she insisted no, she wanted our garlic bread, just without garlic. I let her know she could just order regular bread and it would be $1 less, but she insisted she had a huge craving for garlic bread without the garlic. I wasn't really sure what to do, but her husband got angry and said something like, "Can't you tell that she's pregnant? It's not that hard to just bring out garlic bread without garlic." So I took their order and told the kitchen she wanted garlic bread without garlic. Kitchen staff thought I was being snarky, but brought out the regular bread for her. She immediately starts crying and asking me if I was treating her like an idiot. How could I treat a pregnant woman so badly? Is it that hard to make garlic bread without garlic? But literally, we do nothing different to our garlic bread except use garlic butter instead of our regular butter. Her husband flagged down a manager telling me I was being condescending and that his wife had been craving this all week, but garlic was making her nauseous. The manager came over and I explained what was going on. The manager apologized and took the bread back and told me to just bring out another loaf of bread with garlic butter on the side. I was a little annoyed, but I did it and gave it to them. The husband got angry again, told the manager I was being intentionally difficult and cruel, then left with his wife, who ate the garlic-free garlic bread using the garlic butter. This just feels bizarre to me. Both me and my manager weren't really sure how to handle this. Am I the jerk for bringing out regular bread when the woman ordered garlic-free garlic bread? Edit to clarify. It's a focaccia loaf. The regular and garlic bread are baked the exact same way. It's just that one uses garlic and the other doesn't. Edit 2 to clarify further. The lady says she has been to the restaurant before. She was completely aware of what our garlic bread contained, She was specifically craving our garlic bread, which is a flat focaccia with salt, herbs, garlic, and butter. Our regular bread is the exact same thing with no garlic, so it has the salt, herbs, and butter. They are both served warm. The bread isn't toasted like Texas toast-style garlic bread. The focaccios are pretty flat, so you can't really toast it, but the crust is still pretty crunchy and buttery. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the customers? Please let us know.
I'd slip something else in that bread. Teach Karen to show some respect.
Am I the jerk for not paying the man who mowed my yard? Names have been changed. Saturday morning at 9:30 a.m., I woke up to the sound of suspiciously close mowing. Wondered what kind of monsters the neighbors to my right must be to mow so early. Our houses are so close they almost touch, and promptly fell back asleep. I got up again at 11 to go run some errands, and they were still making yard work noises, so I peeked out to see what was going on, and there was a man in my yard weed whacking. I rushed to get dressed, texted my mom to ask her what to do, and within 5 minutes got her answer. Go thank them and ask why they're there. After a few minutes of confusion, we realized he's been doing the wrong yard for my neighbor Eileen, who I haven't met yet. The price he had quoted her was $100. I didn't have any money to offer him, so I offered him a bottle of water. He apologized for being in my yard. It is gated, but the latch was broken. Hence how he was able to get in, and loaded up his truck. With the last load of stuff in hand, he yelled at me, "I'm just amazed by how with all your no soliciting and beware of dog signs, you couldn't come out and get me sooner." I apologized and told him I was asleep, and then he tacks on, "And you didn't even offer to pay me either." At this point, I'm a bit confused. Am I supposed to have paid him? I didn't order his services, and I didn't knowingly let him do my yard. But I also didn't have anything to offer him. I consulted my parents and a couple of friends, and they said I was right not to pay him, that it could have been a scam, and to check with Eileen as soon as I can. There are no cars in Eileen's driveway until roughly 2:30 p.m. I run out to greet her, and before I can confirm that she's Eileen, she says,
I see that my lawn guy did your yard instead of mine. Why didn't you stop him?
The following conversation ensues. It repeats itself several times. I've cut it down to one iteration. Me. I was asleep.
And you didn't offer to pay him?
No, I couldn't afford to. I just moved here, and I had to pay rent for April and May before my first paycheck gets here, as well as a deposit, car payments, groceries, other bills. I wasn't expecting this, and I didn't order it, so I didn't budget for it.
Right, but you didn't even offer to pay for it.
Me. Correct, because I can't afford it. If he's hurting for money, I will be glad to pay him for his work in May when I get paid.
It's just that you didn't even offer, and you didn't stop him from rendering services either. We'll leave it at that.
Then Eileen's husband and mother peek out from the house, and I realize they've probably been there all day too. Why didn't they stop him? So I'm confused. My neighbors have made it clear what their expectations were, but my parents and close friends seem in direct disagreement. So I'm here to ask Reddit, am I the jerk? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Eileen? Please let us know.
Oh, I would have completely lost it on Eileen. I just can't deal with idiots.
Am I the jerk for tricking my coworker into eating MSG? I have a coworker, Trish, who's really into eating authentic cuisines from other countries and not wanting to eat the fake stuff. Example, she refuses to eat Domino's because according to her, Italians would never eat such a thing. She also claims that she has an MSG allergy. There's a Chinese restaurant close by, but we haven't catered from them since she made a large spectacle of stomach pains and headaches when we ordered from them over a year ago. She had ordered a separate dish of plain steamed veggies and meat, but claimed there must have been cross-contamination and demanded that we not cater from them again. Whenever someone gets Chinese takeout, she loudly talks about how it's fake, Americanized Chinese food and read that MSG would give us cancer. She frequently mentions how much she misses the real Chinese food she had when she went to China, once like a decade ago. She often comments on my food, I'm Chinese, which I cook from home, saying things like,
"Wow, that smells so good. You can tell it's authentic and doesn't have preservatives and isn't catered to white people like the food from that restaurant."
She's white. I mostly ignore this, and honestly, I wouldn't even call my food authentic Chinese food. It's just stir-fry with sauce generally. Last week, I volunteered to bring in food for my team of 6 people. Edit, to clarify, Trish is not part of this team, since I know they all like the food I make. I do cook with MSG sometimes, It's definitely not something all Chinese people do, but my family does it with certain dishes because it makes things delicious. There were some leftovers, which someone put in the fridge after the meeting with a note saying anyone could take some. I didn't really think about it since this is normal. Well, apparently Triss had some of the food I made. At the end of the day, she came by my desk and commented on how delicious my real Chinese food was. She claimed she could tell I made it without preservatives or MSG because she would normally get sick within minutes if she accidentally had MSG. She also claimed it tasted just like the food she ate when she was in Beijing. I'm not even from Beijing. After she went on for a few minutes, I just told her that there was actually MSG added to some of the dishes I made. But it was good to know her allergy was cured now, since I wouldn't want her to get sick. She freaked out and suddenly claimed she had a huge headache and felt like she was going to throw up. She yelled at me for not telling her I put MSG in the food. I didn't realize she would eat it, since she normally doesn't eat the communal food, and it was intended for my team members, not her. She went to HR because I supposedly tricked her into eating something I knew she couldn't eat, and now I have a meeting with HR next week. I don't know how this is going to go. In all honesty, maybe I was kind of hoping to peg down her anti-MSG crusade, but if she had asked, I would have told her what the ingredients were. Am I the jerk for not? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Trish? Please let us know.
Employees like Trish are the worst. Why are some people just so stupid and annoying?
Am I the jerk for telling my parents I would stop inviting them over if they don't stop bothering my cats? The other day, I, female 24, and my husband, male 27, had my parents over to hang out and have a few drinks. We have 2 cats that my parents love, but when my mom has a few too many drinks, she always tries to grab them and hold them. They're both pretty skittish and are quite shy around anyone who isn't my husband or I. I've told my mom quite a few times in the past not to grab them like that, because they obviously don't like it, but she does it almost every time. I was giving some treats to the cats, and my mom tried grabbing one of them, and I said, "You gotta stop doing that. You're gonna give them PTSD." Just joking around while trying to get my point across. Well, she goes to grab one of them again, and I raise my voice at her and say, "I'm not gonna invite you over anymore if you don't stop being a jerk to them." My dad then says, "Well, that's kinda harsh, don't you think? She's just playing with them." And I say, "Obviously I'm not serious, but she won't listen to me." To which my dad replied, "Well, I guess it's time to go home. Obviously they're sensitive about the situation." And then he walks out of my house and slams the door. My mom, confused, gives me a hug and says, "Okay, I guess it's time to go. See you for dinner on Sunday. Love you." And she leaves with my dad. About an hour after they left, my dad texted me saying that what I said wasn't fair and that family should come before pets, and refuses to believe that I wasn't being serious about not inviting them over in the future. Now it's Sunday. My mom canceled dinner. She says she's not even the slightest bit mad at me, which I believe, but won't give me a reason why they canceled. My husband says while he's proud of me for raising my voice, I may have sounded a little aggressive, and now my dad isn't really talking to me either. Am I the jerk? Edit. My mom isn't like this all the time. If she's not drinking, all she wants to do is give the cats cookies, and she only pets them when they come to her. Edit 2. Lots of you are saying to not serve my mom alcohol when she comes over if this is the case. Usually when we hang out, it's a bring your own beer situation because my husband and I don't drink much, so there isn't usually much more than a 6-pack in the fridge, if that. Am I the jerk for telling my wife to step up as a mother? So I, 33 male, had been married to my wife, 31 female, for 6 years. 2 years ago, we adopted our 2 kids, girl who's 7 and boy who's 5, from Haiti. They were toddlers when we brought them home, so we had never really been through the newborn stage. Well, my wife and I decided to have a biological baby. She's currently 5 months old. Well, when she was born, my wife decided she needed to make up for all the lost time that she was pregnant, and in doing so, kinda left all the childcare on me. My wife loves the baby and cuddles with her, but the second she starts crying, my wife hands her over to me. She knows how to change her, but she believes it isn't her job. It was never something we agreed upon, like some weird deal where we agreed she would carry the baby for 9 months and I would raise it. We formula feed, which I prefer, but I can't leave her home alone with the baby. Basically, yesterday I had to take my 7-year-old to a soccer game. I left my wife with the baby and she was just sleeping in her crib. My wife called me mid-game and screamed at me about leaving the baby with her. She said that she needed to be changed and I had to come back home and clean it up. I asked if she knew how to do it. She used to be a full-time nanny, and she said yes, but it's not her job. I drove back home, changed the baby, and took her back to the soccer game. By the time I came back, there were only about 10 minutes left. One of the other moms told me that my daughter had been switched to center midfield and scored 3 times in a row and basically won for her team. I was so proud. When she was done, she asked why the baby was here, and I said I had to go pick her up. Then she asked if I had seen her while she was center mid, and I told her the truth. She was so upset and wouldn't talk to me. I, of course, didn't badmouth my wife to her. I offered to go get her ice cream, but she wasn't in the mood. When we got back home, I heard her crying to my wife. I obviously don't mind her venting to my wife, but my wife was saying things like,
"Yeah, he shouldn't have done that," and "I'm so sorry he treated you like that,"
even though I told her on the phone that I was going to miss part of the game if I came and picked the baby up. My wife and I got in an argument later. I told her that she actually has to care for the baby, and she basically called me selfish and lazy. We go to a marriage counselor. We don't have many problems in our marriage, but we had to do it for the adoption, and we ended up sticking with it, as well as our own therapists. The marriage counselor has ruled out postpartum, and she has suggested for my wife to do more with the baby, but she doesn't want to. Here's where I am definitely the jerk. She said,
"Stop acting like you're my slave or something."
I then snapped back, "Well, you need to step up as a parent." I know I'm the jerk for saying that to her, but am I the jerk for genuinely thinking it?
Karen coworker demands we give her money for her kid.
This coworker was a single parent with one kid who had health issues. However, the kid was very active and tried to not let these issues affect their activities outside of school. In the 2 years that I worked with her, we would be constantly told about how little Johnny's street dancing was going. Every single day. Now, believe me, I appreciate that people love their kids, but the only topic we could listen to in her presence was how fantastic her kid was. About 18 months into working with her, she announces that Kid's dance troupe had won a national competition and were going to some European country to compete. We all nodded approval and tried to get on with our work. She comes in one day with a wad of paper and announces that Kid has to raise money in order to go on this trip for the competition, and each family had been tasked with raising X amount of money. Now, I appreciate that whereas when I was a kid, if you couldn't afford to do something, you didn't do it. Raising money from family and friends is a way to make activities accessible to kids who are of lower incomes. However, if you are living on a limited income, it's likely that your family and friends are limited too. Also, if the only people you socialize with are the people in your activity who are all trying to get the money to go on the trip, then your pool of people to raise money from becomes limited. Thing is, anyone else in the office who had been doing anything with their kids or family or raising money for charity, she had sworn off from supporting them because she either had her chosen charities or had to think of Kid because she was on a limited income. Well, coworker announced Kid was having a dance-off that would be sponsored, and she needed us to donate so Kid and her could go on this trip. Now, the trip was going to be flying out to an Eastern European country, staying in a hotel, and the competition. Okay, you think not too bad. The competition is 3 days. But no, there's more. They're making a holiday of it, so they need money for 5 nights and also to cover food, travel to the airport, spending money. And by this point, most of us had switched off. We were going to be paying for her and her son's holiday. She needed 2,000 pounds. There were 8 of us in the office. One of my coworkers asked how much she had raised from friends and family, and coworker told us that she had nothing as they couldn't afford it, and all her friends were in the same position, trying to raise 2,000 pounds each. So she goes up to our boss and puts a form in front of her and asks how much she is going to sponsor her kid for. Boss says 30 pounds. Fills out the form. Then she works around the group and we all put down 10 pounds. She then goes off to the other offices in the building to get them all to sign up. One of my coworkers commented that between us, she at least got 100 pounds, which was 1/20th of what she was trying to raise, so that was a start. Now, the forms had all had sponsor per hour of the dance-off, but each of us had written the sum we were sponsoring in the next column as max, so not 10 pounds an hour, which would be 80 pounds, but 10 pounds donation. She comes back about 2 hours later, great use of time, looking really pleased with herself, and without any prompting says how she signed up enough people to nearly cover the whole amount. We think nothing of it. After all, if people who barely know her wanted to sponsor her like that, then that was between them and her. For me, I was feeling like a bit of a jerk to her because she was always a jerk over the rotations, and I did a lot of voluntary work at my own expense as my way of giving back that I didn't make public, but did eat up a chunk of my free money. I'd never met her son and had no real connection to her other than that she worked in my office. Well, a couple of weeks later and the dance-off is over. In she comes on the Monday morning looking all pleased with herself and tells us that we had better have our wallets ready as they did more than the 8 hours they had planned. They went back the next day and did another 8 hours. Now, I have an issue with people doing things like that, because if you have budgeted to sponsor X and it's now 2 times that amount, then that's a bit of an emotional blackmail. But we had all put a maximum on our donations, and so it wasn't our issue. She comes around with the sponsor sheets and goes to one of my coworkers, nice coworker, who hands her a tenner. She laughs and just stands there looking at him. He looks at her. She looks at him. He looks at her still. Then he says, "Okay," and turns back to his desk. Coworker,
"And the rest?"
nice coworker, "Sorry?"
"The rest. You owe another 150 pounds.
No. I sponsored your son for £10 maximum donation. It's on the form.
"No, you didn't. It was 10 pounds an hour."
No. Here, let me see the form. Coworker tried to snatch it away, but one of my other coworkers, nice coworker 2, comes up behind her and grabs it. Nice coworker 2. No, definitely says 10 pounds max. In fact, we all wrote that, except boss, who wrote 30 pounds max. We have all pulled out our 10-pound notes, and boss has 30 pounds in hand. Coworker,
"That isn't good enough. You're being mean. How am I going to raise the money for our holiday if you don't pay?"
Nice coworker 2, really quietly. You do what me and my wife do for our kids. You save up and go when you can afford it and don't expect other people to pay it for you.
"I'm a single mother. I need this."
I had to go to deliver some trainings, so I got up, put my tenner on her desk, and shouted that it was there if she wanted it as I walked out of the door. It seemed that it didn't go too well when I left. The rest of the office dug their heels in and said that they had offered money because she had put them on the spot. She insisted that we owed her because we had misled her on how much we were giving. Turns out everyone else who had sponsored had averaged about 3 pounds max. She hadn't checked. Shortly afterwards, HR told us no more sponsorship or charity collecting in the office. We had to fight to be allowed to have poppies on sale and reception because of this. Actually, that probably increased her maliciousness in scheduling the rotations. Well, what would you do if you had a coworker hounding you for money? Would you give them any? And if so, how much? Please let us know.
I don't think they should have given her anything, to be honest. I know I wouldn't have.
Am I the jerk for telling my daughter that she's getting what she deserves? I, 58, male, have 2 daughters. One from a previous marriage and another from my wife's previous marriage. Both daughters are around the same age. Think mid-20s. My daughter Allie has never gotten along with her stepsister Joanna. If Joanna invited Allie to a movie, Allie was suddenly super busy and had no time. If Joanna wanted to come with Allie to a party, Joanna wasn't invited and there was no way she could bring her. She'd rip up Joanna's things and would blame Joanna when she'd be grounded. Just the run-of-the-mill petty teenager BS. Joanna was a good sport and always seemed to take things on the chin. Her explanation was always that sisters fight. Until about maybe 3 or 4 summers ago, Allie was home from college and was going through a rough breakup that was causing her grades to tank, which put her on academic probation. Allie was upset and was taking it out on everyone, especially Joanna. My wife and I told her to cut it out, and she seemed to catch on that her behavior wasn't going to be accepted. Come to find out, after Allie leaves to go back to college, that she had completely destroyed Joanna's scrapbook with pictures of her dad and destroyed a lot of the shirts she had left of his. Joanna didn't make a stink about it in front of us, but that night the house stunk of E6000 and Mod Podge. You could guess what she spent the night doing. After that incident, Joanna had completely given up on Allie. Allie has a birthday coming up. Joanna wouldn't even sign the card. Allie is in town for the weekend. Unless it's a holiday or family event, Joanna wasn't there. And honestly, we didn't blame her. Now the issue is that Allie wants Joanna to let things go and let bygones be bygones. Joanna is getting married soon, and Allie wants an invite. It was brought up this past week at a family dinner. Joanna and her fiancé, as well as their son, attended. Allie brought up how the kids were the same age and how it would be cool after the wedding if the kids could hang out. Allie has also asked what she should wear to Joanna's wedding and if she'd be a bridesmaid. Joanna pretty much laid it out for Allie that she wasn't coming and that the kids wouldn't be seeing each other outside of family events. The night was pretty tense afterwards, and I asked Joanna if there was any way she would forgive Allie. She said she wanted nothing to do with her, and I told her I fully understand that she carries a lot of hurt from how Allie treated her. Allie came to me after Joanna left and pretty much begged me to convince Joanna to move past things. I told her that had she been a more considerate and kind person back then, that maybe she'd have a chance at a relationship with her stepsister. I told her that she made her bed and she needs to lay in it. She said I'm a jerk and that any good father would want to see his kids reunite. Am I the jerk for telling her she deserves this? Info. For everyone asking and making assumptions about my parenting, Allie was never allowed to slide with anything she did to her sister. She was grounded. She had things taken from her. We replaced the things we could that she broke, and we made sure Joanna was supported and validated throughout the years. We never told Joanna to get over anything. We never told her she had to forgive Allie. When we offered Allie therapy, she was 14. We weren't going to force our daughter to go to therapy where chances were she would just tell her therapist she didn't want to be there and be uncooperative, and most likely have the therapist stop seeing her, as we can't and weren't going to force a kid to be somewhere she didn't want to be, just for her to lash out at her sister even worse. When Allie destroyed those things, she was banned from coming back until she apologized and made things right by Joanna. Joanna said herself she didn't want the apology, and my wife and I did our best to surround her with love while she was grieving the loss of those things she cared for. Joanna moved out, so the punishment was moot. We are aware Allie sucks. We did everything we could within reason. I didn't raise Allie to be this way. We didn't encourage this, nor did we allow her to believe the behavior was acceptable. Edit. This thread is an absolute pit of people who don't seem to understand some kids just aren't receptive. I'm kind of done seeking internet help here. You all seem wonderful, and I'll be sure that on the next go-around, I toss my kid to a psych ward and put all blame on the healthcare system for not fixing them. Goodness gracious, never become parents. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Allie? Please let us know.
Yowza canowza. I need a smoothie after hearing that one.
Smug guy wants to order for the table. I make sure he gets his wish. I worked as a server for a small, brand new family-owned restaurant. The place was one step below white tablecloth and had a bar on one side with the restaurant on the other. The owners were awesome and provided industry professionals to train us on how to treat a customer and maximize our tips. As an example of how effective this training was, on opening day, I dropped an entire tray of drinks down a woman's back, yet this family returned several more times and would only let me serve them. Owner brought them a parka the first time they returned. Our technique, we were taught, was to establish who was paying from social cues and make sure they are happy. If a couple comes in and you believe the man is paying, make the woman feel like a queen. When it's time to pay, she'll likely encourage a higher tip. Incredibly effective. As I finished taking an order, I noticed a family of 4 being sat in my section and stopped by immediately to introduce myself. My assessment is this: husband and wife, very nicely dressed. Their beautiful early 20s daughter, my age, and what I gather is her boyfriend wearing a suit and tie. Dad is very clearly paying, but aspiring businessman here interrupts mom when she's ordering her drink to inform me he'll be ordering for the table. If looks could kill, the father would have taken out this young man and probably 10 people in the bar area. Oh buddy, your night is not going to go the way you thought. Every time I returned to the table, I would face him, only look at him and talk to him, turning my back to the father. Daughter asked for something. I don't remember what, and without ever acknowledging her, I asked him, "May she have that?" He barely stammered out a yes. When I brought the bill, I set it right in front of him. They hung around for a while, and I continued to check in and refill drinks while the bill remained untouched. I think Dad was making him sweat. Eventually, Dad grabs the bill and put his card in. I brought back the receipt and thanked the young man for coming in and walked away. I was returning from another table when they were getting up from the table, and the young guy moved to the door at a speed that made lightning look slow. The other 3 were all smiles, and the dad looks across the dining room and mouthed, "Thank you." I gave him a smile and a nod and continued on my way. The tip amount is a number I don't remember, but I know it was good. Really good. It must have been a small wedding because I never received an invite. Edit. I'm trying to keep up on replies, but I'm a bit overwhelmed at the moment. Thank you everybody for the kind words and awards. They've been fun to read. From the comments and a few PMs, I would like to make a few comments. 1. You were rude. Yes, absolutely. This situation could have blown up in spectacular fashion. I took a chance, not thinking of the potential downsides, and came out just fine. 2. In my culture, this is expected. I'm aware of that, and had the young man been respectful, I would have gone along with it. But it was not my intention to disrespect cultural norms, rather to put a smug buffoon in the spotlight. 3. How is this malicious compliance? Judging by the replies, upvotes, and the post still being up, I'm guessing at least 3 people think it is. Edit 2. The replies and respectful criticisms of my actions have been very nice to read and reply to. I'm trying to keep up with replies, but they're coming in faster than I can get to them. Due to a comment I made on an unrelated post, someone has created a new account to message me outright hate, so I'm going to step away for a bit. Thank you again for your reception, and I will return to replies after I decompress a bit. It's my day off. Go see your kids. You're here every day. I hate that this is my second post here, but that's what happens when you work the same retail job for a couple of years. So my work happens to be my regular grocery store. I like shopping there on grocery day because I get a ton of freebies and discounts. On this particular Saturday, I decided to do my weekly shopping before starting a new week of being yelled at for $13 an hour. I should make it clear here, I was not in my work clothes. My normal attire for work is cargo pants and my work shirt. This particular day, I decided to wear a Hawaiian shirt and shorts. I don't know why. As I set my orange juice in my cart, I can feel someone staring at me. It's the kind of intense stare that you only feel after they've been checking you out for a good few minutes or so. I turn around and see this customer that I recognize immediately. She comes by nearly every day for random little household goods or weird little overpriced succulents. She's got some poorly behaved little kids too, but they weren't there with her. I turn back around, figuring she didn't have anything to say to me. She didn't ask me a question, didn't tell me I dropped something, nothing. I go back to shopping and start debating which almond milk is less crappy when I feel her staring at me again. This time I make it a point to turn back around and make eye contact with her.
It's about time you noticed me. I don't know what happened to the employees here. Everyone used to be so nice. Now you people barely even acknowledge a loyal customer.
She proceeds to walk up to me and cross her arms, like she's my mom or something. Look, I'm a young guy. I started working here as a teenager, so I'm used to being talked down to. This lady just bothered me a lot. Miss, I helped you out a few days ago. If there's a question that you have, I can quickly answer, but I'm on my day off. I'm not supposed to work when I'm not clocked in. She looks at me like I just spoke a foreign language and huffs.
You shouldn't be here on your day off then. Besides, I'm still a customer and I come in when you're working.
At this point, I'm beginning to get irritated. Normally I wave them off, but because I'm not in my work clothes, I have the freedom to say what I want. I understand that I see you during my shifts, but this isn't one of them. You're trying to make me work on a day that I have off, and I don't get many of them. Technically, I shouldn't even help you out like I originally offered. Thank you for reminding me. I then shove the almond milk back on the cooler rack and walk away. She left a complaint with the manager immediately. They called me up to the front, thinking I was on a shift. When I explained what happened, my manager just laughed at the lady. She's always been a bit of a problem customer, so we never really bother with her complaints. She even threatens to call corporate, so my manager wrote the number down and dared her to call them. She said something along the lines of, "Go for it. While you're at it, tell them what you told my employee. They'll love to know that you tried to harass him," or something like that. She still shops there, but she actively avoids me when I'm a cashier or bagging. Not a very exciting story, but it still cracks me up. I'm not allowed to take the full break I'm entitled to? Alright, enjoy getting in trouble. I work at a large company that we like to call Wally World. Wally World has a break policy where you are allowed to take an hour-long, unpaid meal break, but it has to at least be 30 minutes. Now, a lot of the older people don't mind taking just 30 minutes, but it's common rule that minors should follow the hour-long meal schedule. I was told that any time I was getting a meal break, I could take an hour. I typically only do 45 minutes, but still long enough for me. The thing is that minors can't work longer than 30 hours a week, be it during a normal school week. I average 28 hours a week. That's 2 8-hour shifts on the weekend and 3 6-hour shifts during the weekdays typically. I'm nearing 6 months and have always taken a 45-minute long meal break. Now I'm suddenly being told that if I work 6 hours, then I should only be taking a 30-minute meal break. My department was very insistent on that for anyone working 6 hours. I was confused seeing as all the new hires could take an hour-long meal during their 6-hour shifts, but I suddenly couldn't. At the time, I didn't realize this, But if I take only a 30-minute lunch with those shifts, then I would be going over the time I was allowed to work. I started to question it all, and it took a few weeks of going over 30 hours to finally talk to my store's personnel about it. At first, she was confused, but after I explained it all and went into the website to show the exact times I had been clocking in and out, she just told me to follow my schedule, and I thought that was that. Of course, my department managers weren't too happy, but they suddenly stopped telling me to take shorter breaks and started asking if I would be willing to take shorter breaks. I didn't realize that they actually got in trouble until an older coworker overheard the manager talking about scheduling all the breaks when I'm not supposed to take 30 minutes anymore. Edit. I really don't plan on leaving Wally World, mostly because I live in a small town and Wally World pays me the best. I've already had 2 jobs before this, and so far Wally World has been the best. The only reason I got into this issue is because I struggle to speak up for myself, but I've definitely made big strides in that in recent years. I'll be switching departments on the first day of May, thankfully. Once I move out to college, though, I'll definitely try my best to get another job. But for now, I'm fine with where I stand and happy with the bonuses. Am I the jerk for telling my future mother-in-law that I'm glad I wasn't raised by someone as judgmental as her? I, 22 female, along with my sisters, 26, 25, and 24, were adopted from foster care by our dads when we were under the age of 10. Our biological parents were crappy people, and they left us all with issues that at the time made us unadoptable. We were separated for almost 6 months before I was initially fostered by our dads, who upon learning I was one of 4, fought to get us back together and keep us that way, and they did. I was 4, and I finally had a loving family, a whole family. I always felt so incredibly blessed to have them. There's no single word that could sum up how much I love and appreciate them for keeping us together and giving us a home. I met my fiancé in freshman year of college. We got engaged in lockdown. I had met his family before, but not too often. During lockdown, we stayed away from our families because we didn't want to put anyone at risk. And the last month or two, we've been branching out more though. About 2 weeks ago, we were invited to his parents' house for dinner. While we were there, the topic of adoption came up and fostering came up, and my fiancé's mother made some comments about it being the least desirable option and not anyone's first choice to have a family. She followed that up with not understanding 2 dads or 2 moms raising kids and it not making sense for kids to have that. My fiancé cut in before she could say any more and told her she was out of line and told her that her views were hurtful and very outdated. She acted all offended and told him she was allowed to express her opinions and feelings. I couldn't hold it in and told her I was glad I wasn't raised by someone as judgmental as her and instead was raised by 2 incredible men who gave 4 girls the family they never would have had otherwise. We left. My fiancé told his mom she was being a jerk. His siblings and him were talking afterward, and they all said what their mom said was wrong, but that I was way out of line and made things worse. They said I ended up being the biggest jerk in the whole ordeal instead of smiling politely and leaving it to him. Am I the jerk? Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you put mother-in-law in her place? Or just sit there and not say anything? Please let us know. I'd probably start a food fight, to be honest. Wonder if that would make me the jerk. Am I the jerk for not taking my friend to the airport after I said I would? I, 35 female, have been friends with Scott, 35 male, for years now. Scott recently got his 2nd shot and decided to schedule a trip to go visit his aging parents in another state. Before scheduling his flight, he had called me to ask if I could drive him to the airport, about 1.5 hours from where we live. I should add that I was not getting paid for this, but was doing it as a favor for a friend on a tight budget. On the day that Scott was looking to fly out, I had plans for a hike scheduled with another friend of mine, Jane. Our plan was for her to meet me at my house at 10 a.m. and we would leave from there. Due to lockdown, the hike we were planning to do requires free, timed entry reservations to be made online. Jane and I had reserved our time slots about 2 weeks before Scott called me asking if I could give him a ride. I told Scott about these plans and let him know that if he wanted me to drive him to the airport on that particular day, that I needed to be home by 10 a.m. to meet up with Jane. He said that was fine and that he would schedule an earlier flight so I could be home in time. Scott booked himself a flight for 9:30 a.m. and decided that he wanted to be at the airport by 7:30 a.m. to allow adequate time for check-in and security. This would require us to leave no later than 6 a.m. to make it on time. I told him that was fine and that I would pick him up shortly before 6 a.m. The morning of, I showed up at Scott's apartment at about 5:45 a.m. I rang his doorbell and knocked on his door and got no answer. I tried calling his cell phone and I got his voicemail. For the next 45 minutes, I tried to get a hold of him to no avail. I rang his doorbell and knocked on his door multiple times and called his cell phone countless times. Finally, at 6:30 a.m., I gave up. I left him a voicemail telling him I was going home and left. I did not hear anything from Scott until 9:30 a.m. when he called me in a panic, telling me to drop everything and go pick him up. He's a super deep sleeper and had slept through his alarms. He says he never heard me knocking on his door or ringing his doorbell, and that he had forgotten to take his phone off silent, which is why he missed all my calls. He told me to go ahead and pick him up and take him to the airport, that he would talk to them about his missed flight, get on the next available flight, and wait at the airport until then. By this time, it was already 9:30 a.m., and Jane was supposed to arrive half an hour later. I told Scott no, that I already had plans, and told him to find another ride. He ended up having to take a taxi to the airport. Scott is now calling me a jerk and saying that I went back on my promise. His reasoning is that because I didn't have to pay for my hike reservations, but he had to pay for his flight, so his flight should have taken priority. According to him, I should have found a different hike to do that day and given him a ride anyway. I don't know what to think. Am I the jerk? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Scott? Please let us know.
Why would you be friends with someone like Scott in the first place?
Neighbors beginning to make snide remarks when I walk by after complaint. I, 23 female, moved to a small apartment complex last August to continue college. Only 4 people. A new woman, 30 plus, moved in about 2 months after I moved in. She told me about not having any heat and I let her borrow my heater. From that day, she began to ask me a plethora of things. Can I wash her clothes? Let her borrow money. She eventually would open my door without even asking. I did eventually put up boundaries, but still gave her a good portion of my time. I say this to say we built some sort of companionship, although I looked past several moral qualities I didn't agree with. She hasn't paid rent since she moved in and complains to me about all the issues with the apartment and that they can't kick her out because of the moratorium. She told me her issue is gambling, which would make sense. Since that has now ended, she has moved in 2 men into her apartment to help her pay the rent. The first issue with this is that our parking lot only fits 5 cars. I don't have a car, but there are 2 other neighbors who now park on the street because her faux tenants take up the spots. The second issue is one of the men lives in the living room, which is adjacent to my bedroom, and they are loud. I wake up at 1 a.m. and stay up until 4 a.m. I texted her about this, but it wasn't resolved. One of the men has also come to my home after 11 p.m. to ask for my Wi-Fi, which made me uncomfortable. In addition, I have my own trash cans that I keep close to my apartment. There are cans for each apartment, and she's been using my cans. I wouldn't have had an issue with this, but she doesn't close her bags, and I opened my can a few days ago to bugs everywhere. I've never had this issue. I asked her if she would stop using my cans or close the bags, and she gets really upset with me. She states,
The landlady says it's for everyone. You're making a big deal out of nothing,
etc. She has so many people over, the amount of unbagged trash and beer cans is ridiculous. So I did tell the landlords, and they responded by sending out a group letter stating many things that were prohibited. The next day, she came to my apartment, rang the door multiple times, and then knocks. She has all the stuff I let her borrow with her and asked me if I told the landlord. I didn't know which part she was referring to, but I said yes. She got upset and tried to tell me she didn't snitch on me, although I don't do anything to bother my neighbors, and said I don't need to worry about her anymore. I just said thank you and closed my door. Now, when I leave my apartment or come into contact with her, she'll speak under her breath or laugh. It's getting out of hand. I don't respond, but I'm not sure what else to do. This is my first place alone, so I'm just a bit taken aback. Entitled Mom's debit card doesn't work, claims I broke it. As many of you in the US are aware, and possibly outside the US, but I digress, most bank cards have a square chip at the bottom of the card. It's supposed to be an added security measure or something, along with a normal stip on the side for swiping. Most stores have a chip reader added to their machines, but some still don't. This happened a couple years ago at the King of Burgers in the drive-thru. We hadn't had a chip reader installed at the time, so people had to swipe their cards using the strip on the sides of the card instead of inserting their card to the chip reader. One day, this entitled parent came up to the drive-thru with 3 kids in the back seats. They're pretty irrelevant to the story, beside the fact they were there. She was at the pay window, and when she handed her card to me, I noticed it was snapped along the strip. I informed her that the card won't work. She snapped at me to
Just use the chip.
so I explained to her that our machines don't have a chip reader. Entitled Mom.
Well, just try the strip. You should have a chip reader. This is ridiculous. What kind of place are you? How am I supposed to feed my kids?
I obliged to show her that it wouldn't work. I swiped her card and it read on my computer as an error. So I again informed her that we would not be able to use her card because the strip is snapped. So I began to hand her card back to her. Without saying a word, she glared at me, snatched the card out of my hand, and pulled out of the drive-thru. I just kind of shrugged and forgot about her and got back to the other customers behind her. A couple of moments later, the phone in the manager's office rings. My manager is wearing a headset as well, so she can help take orders when the rush starts, so I can hear parts of the conversation. Not to mention, the back area at this particular store is about 500 feet max, so we're all pretty crammed together as is. Entitled Mom starts going off on my manager about how I refused to take her payment and that I snapped her card in anger and called her names. My manager was able to hear my side of the interaction at the time because of our headsets and just simply told her that she knew what really happened. Entitled Mom started demanding a corporate number, but to be honest, I think my manager was done. She just said this specific location was privately owned and that the owner will be informed before hanging up on her. Kinda anticlimactic, but I was grateful to have my manager shut that down real quick. I've had managers take Karen's side before at other jobs, but that's why I hate customer service. Hope you enjoyed, and thanks for sticking with my dumb ramblings.
I kicked my Karen cousin out of my house.
A little backstory. I bought my first house at 26 years old. It was a 3-bedroom house and I was single. So after talking to my best friend and cousin, we decided to all move in together. Fast forward 9 months and I ended up falling in love and moving into my partner's house. I told them I would be moving out a month in advance and my cousin had her friend move in. Then, after about 6 months living with my partner, I lost my job of 5 years and needed money. Keep in mind, I had been charging all of them the exact amount of my mortgage. I made absolutely zero profit after 15 months of renting to them. I told my cousin that I was thinking about raising the rent so I could make money, and she immediately got angry. Keep in mind, we've been close our entire life. She said the house wasn't worth the extra money. It's a brand new remodeled house with brand new appliances and refinished hardwood floors, and the house next door rents for $1,400 and I was charging them all a total of $930, the mortgage. I told her I was still raising the rent and left it at that. A week later, I went over to the house to talk to her, and she said they were all going to just move out and find somewhere else to live. I was hurt, but I understood. So 2 weeks after, my cousin told me they were all going to just move out. I was talking to my mom, who's a real estate agent, and I decided that since the housing market is hot, I wanted to just sell it and be done with the stress. I texted my cousin, best friend, and my cousin's friend who lived there a little paragraph about how thankful I was they stayed and paid the mortgage and how much I appreciated them, but that I would be selling the house in a month. This is when my cousin just unloaded, saying I was a jerk for kicking them out. Keep in mind, this is a month after she told me they were moving out, and I gave them another month before I told them I needed them out. She said I don't have family loyalty, when in reality, I knew she was smoking in my house, among other things, and I stupidly said nothing because they were paying my mortgage. Family loyalty was me asking for rent and then paying a week after the due date or the electric bill. They never paid on time, and when I would request the money in text, they would thumbs down the text every time. Immature things of that nature. The story ends with my mom finding another house for them to rent, them moving out the night before I said was their last day, and them leaving my house absolutely trashed. Our family is pretty good at not picking sides, but my mom and her sister, my cousin's mom, have definitely not been talking as much as normal since my cousin has told everyone in our family that I'm the jerk. So, am I the jerk? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or their cousin? Please let us know.
I'd contact wherever they're trying to move to and tell them your story. Might change their mind about wanting to rent to them.
HOA member doesn't know the rules as well as he thinks. This story primarily takes place between me and Crappy Neighbor, who's a member of my community's HOA. So a bit of background. Me and my 3 roommates moved into a housing community that is basically just a bunch of cookie-cutter townhomes. All of these homes have garages that open onto streets that wind through the community. This is important later. With your front door opening to a path on the other side of your house. There are also some free parking spots on the edge of the community where there are no houses. When we first moved in, we quickly found out that parking could be a bit of a pain during the day, especially when people had guests during the weekend. Now, my roommates and I admittedly have more cars than the average family. Because we usually have to commute for work, we each have one. We try to make parking easier by using the garage, but we all have tons of sporting equipment, so we can usually only get one car in the garage. When all the parking and all the free spots is full, we'd just park our cars right up against the garage and leave them there during the day or overnight. We had seen other neighbors do it, and it still left ample room for people driving on the street to get by. Well, one day, crappy neighbor came up while my roommates and I are in the garage organizing some stuff and tells us that we can't park there overnight as it's against community rules. Before we had a chance to respond, he added,
"And if you do it again, I will personally make sure you're towed."
His first comment was pretty reasonable. We had just moved in and didn't know that rule. But his second comment really just made him sound like a jerk and wasn't necessary. One of my roommates simply responded that we didn't know as we had just moved in and we wouldn't park there overnight anymore. Well, neighbor, clearly trying to assert his dominance, responded with,
"Good, you better not, because I'll be watching."
Well, from then on, we did follow those rules. If we parked in front of our garage during the day, we would make sure to move before we went to sleep. This worked out for a while until one faithful day. One of my roommates stopped by quickly after work to grab some dinner and clothes before heading to his girlfriend's. This was around 7 p.m., so he just parked up against the garage as it would be quicker than the parking spaces. Plus, it was early enough that he didn't think he'd get towed. Around 8 p.m., he went to head out and his car was gone. Guess who was there though? Crappy neighbor standing right outside. Immediately, he said to my roommate,
"Told you you were going to get towed if you parked here again."
Neighbor and my roommate argued for a bit before roommate came back inside and calls the car lot. Well, it ends up they're closed, so he'll have to get his car in the morning. The kicker? They're going to charge him an overnight fee. All in all, it comes out to $500, which isn't a small amount of money for us. The neighbor has been a jerk to us since we moved in, and even though it wasn't my car that was towed, I took it personally. To make sure we didn't get towed again, we decided to read the community rules, and lo and behold, we found out that the street in front of the garage is actually considered a fire lane, and no one is supposed to park there at any point during the day. Between crappy neighbor treating us like this, and the fact that we could hear him yelling at his wife every night, not a big detail to the story, but just wanted to say to add to my point that this guy was just a jerk, I start to plan my revenge. Since lockdown started, I've been able to work from home, and my desk conveniently looks out onto the street between the houses. This means that I can clearly see crappy neighbor's garage. I start to take notice of when he parks his car out in front of his garage. For about 2 weeks, I noticed that he would come home around 1 p.m. and leave again at 2 p.m. On the third week, I decided I would begin the revenge. On Monday, true to his schedule, he stopped by around 1. After about 10 minutes, I gave the tow company a call and said that he was parked in the fire lane and if they could come and remove his car. 20 minutes later, a tow truck rolled up, hooked his car up, and towed it off. About 15 minutes later, crappy neighbor came out, and I could hear him start to yell back into his house, presumably at his wife. He then left and didn't come back until later that evening after he had gotten his car. Now, it was funny to do this, and I made sure to send snaps to my roommates who didn't work from home, but I wasn't done yet. See, this jerk apparently didn't learn the first time because literally the next day, he parks in front of his garage again. What do? Well, the exact same thing as the day before, of course. Again, crappy neighbor comes out, realizes his car is gone, yells at his wife, and then goes to get it. Now after this time, he's a bit smarter and parks in an actual spot before going in to get his lunch or whatever it is he does there midday. He does this for about 2 weeks before he decides that it's okay to park in front of his garage again. Well, who's still sitting at their desk every day and notices this immediately? Well, me, of course. And being the concerned resident that I am, I immediately call the tow company and off his car goes again. And again, this is met with yelling. I wish that this had a more satisfying ending, but after this third time, I decided I would stop because I genuinely felt bad for his wife, who he seemed to do most of the yelling at, as if it was her fault that he was the jerk. What I can tell you is that it definitely cost him over $1,000. If he hadn't gotten my roommate's car towed, then we wouldn't have ever found that fun little rule. The best part was that a number of my neighbors would have their cars parked there at the same time, and they'd never have their cars towed, which made it all the better than it was. We have had a number of other encounters with him in the time since this has happened, and I have another story that involves the actual HOA that I'll probably write later. That one is still ongoing though, so we'll see how it ends up. Edit 2. By popular decision, I've decided that this story actually won't conclude with me stopping. I've had lots of advice about recording him yelling at his wife and trying to help that situation. I've also been told that I should figure out if he's using HOA funds to pay off these bills. This one may be a bit harder to obtain since we're just renters, but I'll see what I can do. One thing to note is that he has no idea that it's me calling, and I'm trying to keep it that way. I will keep everyone updated with my progress and if anything new happens. Have you ever had a neighbor that you just couldn't stand? If so, what was wrong with them? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for not giving my daughter the basement suite? I've been remarried for 2 years now, and we recently had a son. I also have a 14-year-old daughter from my first marriage and a 12 and 9-year-old stepsons. When my wife was 5 months pregnant, I asked my daughter if she could swap rooms with my stepsons. We had only 4 bedrooms at the time, and my daughter had the largest room. Our plan was for my daughter to take the second largest room, my stepsons to share her larger room, and convert the smaller room into a nursery. I thought this was a fairly reasonable ask, but my daughter made it into a huge fight. And worse was when my ex got involved, who then threatened to take me to court to reduce my custody of my daughter all over a room. This caused way too much stress at home, and I gave in, which I do regret now. But I then proceeded to renovate the basement suite. With my father's help, the basement now had the largest bedroom with a lounge and a full bathroom. It's very easily the nicest part of the house. The kids then started fighting over who would move down there, and I very firmly told my daughter that I renovated it because she refused to give up her room. So my 12-year-old stepson gets to move down there. I don't know if it's just puberty, but she has become extremely hostile and downright mean over this. She no longer comes over as much as before, citing the unfair room as the reason. My ex fully supports her, and I have to wait 5 months before I can even fight this in court. At this point, I'm not even sure it's worth the legal cost, because she'll be 15 in December and her opinion will count in the court. Am I the jerk for not giving in to my daughter's frankly bratty demands? It's hurting me that my daughter feels like I'm pushing her out of the family, but I want to stay true to what I think is right. All attempts to get us in the family therapy has been denied by my ex. And my poor father now feels terrible because he's being partly blamed since he helped with the renovations. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you give her the basement suite or not? Please let us know.
I'd probably take it for myself, to be honest. Sounds really nice.
It's morphin' time. While in a box chain store with my wife, I head over to the electronics section to browse around and wait out a husband's worst nightmare of, I just need a few things. There's a girl there that I'm guessing is in high school since she had a high school sweatshirt on, the same color of the box store colors. She's looking at cell phone cases when a middle-aged man walks up to her and asks her to get the key to a display case for Xbox or PlayStation something. I was not paying attention to either of them until I hear the, "Excuse me." This girl is 5'0" in a sweatshirt and jeans. This guy is close to 6 foot and dressed in business casual and is very confident in himself. He doesn't even suspect how outmatched he is with this kid. She says, "I don't work here," and the self-important male Karen starts. I am not going to get the dialogue between them exactly right since I have nowhere near Hero Girl's ability to think on my feet like she did. Plus, it went on for a couple of minutes and would be forever in this post. Guy.
Then why are you behind the counter?
Her. I'm not behind the counter.
You are by the counter straightening inventory, so you better help me or I will get your manager.
I cannot remember this part without hearing, "It's morphin' time," in my head. I actually start to go over to help the kid out, but there was no need. Hero Girl turns to face the guy. "I'm looking for a specific case for my iPhone, so are you going to help me or not?" Male Karen.
Wait, what? I don't work here.
Neither do I. I'm not going to get into the whole thing, but he would demand something out of her, then she would demand something from him, and it would end the same way every time.
I don't work here.
Neither do I. This went on for a couple of minutes, and Hero Girl pulled out all of the stops. He would say something, and she would come back with a sick grandbaby. Son lost his job. Dad was passing. Mom got hurt. Daughter got married. She had to have had 5 parents and 10 kids, and the whole time this guy just kept going. They threatened to have each other fired so many times it was head spinning. As he got mad and moved closer to her, she would say, 6 feet, or I will tell your manager you're violating your store's distancing policy. He would back up a little and say,
I don't work here.
Neither do I. That happened twice. The woman that was working electronics came out and asked what the problem was, and they both tried to have each other fired. She tried to say neither of them worked there and finally said, "I don't get paid enough for this stuff," and left them to it. A woman with a small kid bumped into me from behind and then started watching with me. The kid tugged on her arm to go, and she said, "Hush, baby, I'm watching this." That made us both chuckle. A manager came up behind us and looked at the scene and said, "Really?" He finally tries to intervene but can't get a word in edgewise. It ends finally with both of them saying the exact same time, "I don't work here, neither do I." Think Abbott and Costello, who's on first? The male Karen looks at the girl, then the manager, then the girl, then the manager. The manager finally says, "Out of the three of us, I am the only one that works here. Now how can I help you?" Hero Girl, "Where are the iPhone cases?" Manager points to the aisle and Hero Girl says pleasantly, "Thank you." She absolutely bounces over to the aisle without a care in the world. Manager turns to male Karen. "And you, sir?" He stammers for a minute and finally sheepishly explains what he needs. The woman that bumped into me says better than anything I've seen all week on Netflix. Me, I rush to find my wife and tell her what happened. So when you hear the, "Excuse me," say something like, "There you are. Where's the ketchup?" Works like a charm. Finally, if Hero Girl reads this, either make a post of what you said or post it in the comments. You were brilliant. Am I the jerk for notifying local shop of their underpriced goods? So there's this card game my friend and I have been playing for almost a decade now, and recently a couple of their old seal booster boxes have been selling for upwards to $1,000. Fast forward to today, when I'm browsing my local vendor's online shop. I surprisingly see two of these rare boxes sealed, going for $15 on their shop. I quickly messaged them to let them know of the money they would lose if someone else were to find these, and they told me they would delist them for now and decide what to do with them. I didn't buy them because I felt that if I bought them at that price, I would be scamming them, and I really don't mind not having them. I then told my friend about it because I thought that he would appreciate knowing that our local vendor had an important piece of our game's history. However, he then told me that he wanted to buy them and flip the boxes for profit. When I told him that I let the shop know of the value and that they had delisted them, he said that I did him over on potentially a lot of money, as well as started making rude remarks. I started doubting myself, thinking I should have told my friend first, and I wasn't loyal enough as a friend to him. But on the contrary, one of the shop's owners thanked me for letting him know since he'd been out of a job for a year now because of lockdown and has been worried about running out of money. So, am I the jerk here? Edit. I forgot to mention that the boxes were in the clearance section of the shop, which may have been important information. Edit. Thank you to everyone that offered their opinions and awards for my problem. I learned a lot from the different perspectives that you all have given me. I definitely see the reasoning behind both sides, and I will do my best to put what I have learned in this thread into practice. Edit. Some additional context because people are asking. My friend doesn't flip cards or collectibles for a living. He works at his family-run restaurant at the moment. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or their friend? Please let us know. Bruh. Buying nephew's lunch means I have to buy random people's lunch? This literally just happened. I work for a security company that has a branch that transports patients from regular hospitals to psychiatric ones. Anyway, our local office is in one of the main hospitals here. I started getting hungry and we didn't have any transports at the moment, so I decided to go down to the cafeteria and get some food. When I got down there, I was surprised to see my second eldest nephew, who we'll call R, looking over everything with a defeated look on his face. I walked up and said, "Hey R, what are you doing here?" He turned and said, "Mama had to bring Pawpaw here cause the only doc around that he needs is here." Side note, they live an hour and 45 minutes away. "Okay, so why you down here looking so upset?" I asked. "I got hungry, but I don't have enough money to get anything," he replied. "No worries, get whatever you want," I told him. I texted my mom to let her know he was with me eating versus lost in the hospital while we were in line. Soon as I had paid for our food, a random woman taps me on the shoulder, looks me in the eye, and says, "Aren't you going to pay for mine too?" "I never planned to," I responded. "Why not? You paid for that kid who has been hanging around for half an hour. Why not pay for cute girls too?" Well, first of all, the kid, as you put it, just so happens to be one of my nephews who is here with my mom and stepdad somewhere. Second of all, I have a girlfriend of the last 5 years that makes you look like an anglerfish. Third,
Why the heck would you just assume that I would buy you anything? You are rude as heck. I'm going to report you to the hospital director and have your job.
Good luck. I don't work for him, so I don't see that happening.
And why do you have a hospital ID badge?
Not that it's any of your business, but my company rents an office in this building, and we have them so we can scan through the doors.
Whatever. I'm still reporting it.
Okay, well, the person you're talking about is 2 people behind you and just saw the whole thing, so have fun with that. Then I walked off and joined my nephew at the table. Not sure what was said after I walked off, but I saw the woman leave the cafeteria with nothing, and the director came out of the pickup area laughing his butt off. Won't adjust the schedule so I can attend prom? Back in my younger days, before most people had cell phones, I was working at a fast food restaurant during my senior year of high school. The main reason I decided to work there was because one of my best friends worked there, and around the time I started working, our other best friend joined us. We were very close, and we spent our minimum wage earnings on stupid stuff. This fast food restaurant was the king when it came to burgers, so we had to learn how to prepare a Whopper of a hamburger in no time flat. We also had to learn how to manage the fried food stations, the registers, the drive-thru, all specialty items, and all cleaning and end-of-day operations. We were pretty sharp kids despite being stupid teenagers, and within a couple of months, we could run an entire shift by ourselves. Normally, there were at least 4 or 5 workers and a manager. We were regularly scheduled with just 3 of us and a manager to work all the night shifts, and we enjoyed working together and running the store. We knew the manager was saving money on labor costs, which made the whole store look good when compared against other stores in the district, but we didn't care. We worked hard, had fun together, and made a nearly criminally small wage for our efforts. At the time, it seemed like we had made it big. As it tends to do, prom season came around. We all went to the same school, so we all had prom on the same day. Compounding the issue, one of my friends was taking another worker as his date. Thinking it would help with scheduling, we notified our manager several weeks in advance. We were all told no. We found that amusing because, of course, we were going to go to our prom. Well, the company policy was that as long as you called before missing a shift, then you wouldn't get in trouble for calling in with an emergency. We timed our calls so that we would all call within a few minutes of each other. The poor manager on shift almost broke down crying, but we felt self-righteous as teenagers often do. I was the last to call, and the manager was full-on begging me not to call out sick. We went off and enjoyed our prom. The next day, when we went in for our shifts, we found out the store had struggled in our absence. The manager had scrambled to get people to come in on their scheduled day off, incurring some overtime. To call overtime discouraged with that company would be an understatement. Some of the managers glared at us, while some others gave us knowing grins. Within a week, we were only ever scheduled with 2 of us working together. I'm sure it ended up costing the company a lot, but it was also very clear that the management had gotten in trouble for not fixing the schedule when we informed them of our prom. The story does have a happy ending. I met my wife while working there, and we've been together for over 20 years now. Am I the jerk for saying that I won't attend after-work events because people from HR will be there? I've always been told to avoid any and all interaction with HR. Get any interaction in writing. They're here to protect the company and its assets at the cost of the employee. They're snakes. Don't give them any information not relevant to your job, etc. I've never had any issues, good employment record overall, and I've also only rarely interacted with people in HR in the past in the first place. But this job I've been at for about 2 years now is organized so that there's HR people in the department rather than them being in their own department. Now we're back in the office and things are slowly opening up, and we've had a few happy hours scheduled. I would ask who all was attending. They'd include HR, and I'd decline without saying why. This kept happening until someone caught on and asked why I always ask who's going since I'll say no anyways. And I said, I might consider going if people from HR weren't also going. They were confused and asked what the issue was, so I said, I don't socialize with HR. Still confused, they were like, why not? Lisa's a really nice person. I said, that could be true, but I think it's inappropriate for HR to be mingling with regular employees. They're in a position of power. The girl I was talking to said that was a jerky way of looking at things and that it made me come across like a snob. I said, it's not that I think I'm better than they are at all. I just don't think socializing with people in a position of power over me is the best idea, especially if there's alcohol involved. I followed up by saying I wouldn't hang out with my boss or supervisor either. She called me weird and has been avoiding me since. She mentioned it to a few other coworkers, and I guess it started a big dialogue among them. A couple of people said they never thought about it like that, but agreed, but warned me that I might be seen as creating a hostile environment and discriminating against the HR employees. Am I the jerk? Thanks for the votes, y'all. I understand clearly that I am not the jerk. HR are there to protect the company and not the employee, and I should continue to avoid any interaction with them that I can, and get every interaction in writing. But I should stop asking and simply avoid pointless interactions and socializing with them as a whole so as to not call attention. Well, what do you think? Do you agree with OP on HR or not? Please let us know.
So is hating on HR like new or something? Because I've honestly never heard of it.
Got into a shouting match with some customers. We had our major crazies of the year last night. Another server's table, group of 7. They were rowdy, but okay. Until near the end, one guy starts like he's about to throw up. At first I thought, okay, maybe he's choking, but he kept going. And his friends were like, oh, he just ate the whole pile of wasabi. He's okay. And he kept heaving, loud, for minutes. Didn't go to the bathroom, just over and over. He never actually threw up, but the whole restaurant couldn't help but hear it. One of my tables was looking a bit sick themselves just at the sound of it. They were at this point already in the process of paying and leaving, which I assured my tables. One of my customers, though, went up and told them that they were being disgusting, inconsiderate jerks. Which, while I don't disagree, them's fighting words. So now this party of 7 is like squaring up with this dude, and another table of mine gets up and circled the wagons around them. No blows were thrown, just heated words. 7 Top was like, we were just having fun, and y'all disrespectful jerks ruined our dinner. We're never coming back. So the group of 7 left, for a minute. Then the heaver comes back in to shout at that customer again. Their friends dragged him out. Then a minute later, one of the women came back in and got shooed by staff. At this point, I stepped outside to make sure they were actually leaving, and sure enough, the jerk heaver was trying to come back in again. Thus far, I'd always been kinda elsewhere, like getting an order, and had not been part of the confrontation, but I was done with these people. I talked to him like he was a darn dog, pointed him back at his car where his family was, and told him, no, you are not coming back inside. If any one of you steps inside again, I am calling the cops. You are leaving right now. I don't shout, but I did. Dude was upset. He was like, I just spent $300 darn here. And I said, and you just ruined dinner for everyone else. None of you are ever allowed back. One of the ladies by the car goes, I have to pee. And I shouted, too bad. Then, the jerk heaver cements my opinion of the lot by saying, oh, forget you guys, and forget your masks. So I went inside and grabbed the phone, dialed the non-emergency number, and came out and stood where they could see me with the phone to my ear. They shouted at some randoms who were walking through the parking lot something about how they should never eat here. Then they left. Oh boy. Am I the jerk for kicking my aunt and her 5-year-old out of my house because of my bonsai tree? I'm 20, male, and my aunt, female 38, had a very big fight with my uncle a month ago. She said that she caught him watching videos of some girls dancing on Instagram or something that doesn't matter. She took his phone and smashed it in the wall, grabbed my cousin, who's 5, and got out of the house. My grandparents live far away, and my parents aren't on good terms with her, so she came to my apartment. I love plants and made kind of a garden in one of the rooms with all types of plants, including my treasure, a 2 decades old bonsai tree that I got from my father when I was born. He grew it himself when he learned that my mom was pregnant. Anyway, I had to find other places for my plants since they were going to be staying in the room. Most of them I gave to my friends to take care of until my aunt had another place to go. That was supposed to be a few days, but they ended up staying almost a month. The only one that stayed with me was my bonsai. Everything was fine at first until my cousin saw my bonsai. He looked very interested in it, which made me very happy that he liked plants as well, and I took it for him to take a closer look. I needed to water it anyway. He was very careful to not hurt the plant and seemed very worried to touch it, which made me even happier that he respected the plant and was careful with it. I went off to get water and left him alone with it. It took less than a minute for me to hear a crack noise coming from my room. I came running back to see my tree knocked over to the ground with shards of what was once its vase and my cousin crying. My aunt came soon after and almost stumbled on my tree when she came in to help her son while I was saving my tree. She was furious that I left her son alone and that I prioritized a stupid tree over him. That's not even true. I first checked if he was okay, and only when I saw that the worst he had was some small cuts on his hand, I went for the tree. She said that she would burn my bonsai when she comes back. She took him to the hospital while I went to find an emergency vase. Thankfully, the tree was okay. When they came back, I told my aunt to take her stuff and get out since I can't risk hurting my tree. She was shocked that I was prioritizing a tree over her and my cousin, and that I would let them be homeless over it. I told them they can simply go home and figure it out with her husband. I gave them the rest of the day to take their stuff and locked myself in my room with my bonsai, obviously. The next day, I wake up with my grandfather furious with me, saying that I should have thrown my tree out of the window for my cousin. Obviously, my aunt had told him her own version of the situation, which is not a new thing. Every time someone does something she doesn't like, she calls her dad manipulating the truth as much as possible in her favor. This is part of the reason my parents don't talk to her anymore. I don't think that I'm the jerk, but would like an outside perspective of it. What do you guys think? Edit. Thanks for the response, guys. There is something that I need to clarify though. I did take care of my little cousin first. I'm sorry if I expressed myself wrong, but as I said, he wasn't hurt. Just a tiny cut in his hand. It took a minute or so for Aunt to see what happened, and by the time she came, I had already cleaned up his wound. I did not ignore him while I was looking for a vase. I'm surprised people actually thought that. But anyway, thanks for the reply, guys.
Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.